order. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Matsu Borough Assembly on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. Madam Clerk, will you take the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers.
Here.
I'm expecting Dee McKee, Robert Yunt.
Here.
Moki 2.
Here.
Jesse Sumner.
Here.
Ron Bernier.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I think we have a number of people that are new here tonight. And if you didn't get an agenda, they're out that door. So if you want to follow along with what's going on. Is there anything that the members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, I don't see anything. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, I don't see anything. So hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. And if you all stand, and Amy, could I have you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no meeting minutes to be approved. The next item is agency reports. Let's see, do we have a report from the cities? I don't see anybody from either one of the cities. And we don't have a report from the school district. I don't see Todd or anybody else. Is there anyone that's taken Todd's place from the state of Alaska? Nope. Okay. The next item is, let me put into the record that Assemblyperson McKee arrived at 6:03. And the next is committee reports, Joint Assembly and School Board Committee on School Issues. I don't think you've had a meeting, have you? No. And are there any of the public relation reports that any of the Assembly would like to know? Okay, the next item on our agenda is managers' comments. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I've got a little bit of a lengthy update, so I apologize for that. That's what you get for taking a meeting off. But I want to start by ask Miss Bonnie Quill to stand. Like to begin by recognizing Bonnie Quill. On June 17th, Destinations International announced Bonnie Quill, President and CEO of the Matsu Convention and Visitors Bureau, or CVB as we know it, as one of 3 winners of the Destination Organization Leadership Award, one of the most prestigious individual honors in the destination marketing industry. The Destination Organization Leadership Award recognizes outstanding individuals who, through their work and achievements, have made a significant impact on the destination marketing industry, as well as a profound difference in their communities. Bonnie is the first Alaskan to win the award. Destinations International represents destination marketing organizations around the world and focuses on advocacy, leadership, and education in the destination marketing industry. Bonnie has been with the Matsu CVB for 22 years. In addition to leading the CVB, Bonnie has held leadership positions on the board of directors for the Alaska Travel Industry Association, the Alaska State Fair, and helped found the Glen Highway National Scenic Byway organization. In 2021, she earned the certified Destination Marketing Executive Accreditation. Obviously, this award speaks very highly of Ms. Quill, but also speaks very well for the Matsu overall and continued efforts to advance the valley as a tourism destination. Congratulations, Bonnie and Matsu. So we'll just let the fun continue. I'm going to invite Miss Amy Spargo up to the podium. I'd like to introduce her. She is the chairperson of the Matsu 2024 Arctic Winter Games Host Society. The Arctic Winter Games Host Society has agreed to provide the Assembly an update on recent happenings and progress related to preparations for the 2024 Games and allow for the Assembly to engage with questions and discussion. So with that, Amy, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mayor DeVries, Manager Brown, members of the Assembly. Thank you so much for inviting our host society here to give you an update of what's been happening in the last year. I'll wait for our presentation to load there.
I know. Sorry, it's taken a minute. Your clicker's right there, by the way, in front of you.
Okay.
Bear with us.
I'll just start by saying that when I was here last summer, we had just been awarded the bid in the spring, and we were organizing a working board of professionals who were going to be a volunteer working board to host these games. And one of the first tasks that we took on last September after we started meeting was to come up with a vision, mission, and values for our organization. There we go. And the best part about this task was that we got to hear from all of our board members what they loved about the Matsu Valley and why we were excited to host. And I just want to highlight that our mission promotes healthy recreational activities, and we want the world to know that the Matsu is a great place for healthy recreational activities and that we are full of future leaders. So we are excited to share what the Arctic Winter Games are and where we are in our planning process, with the goal of highlighting what makes the Matsu such a great place to be. So the games started in 1970. Governor Hickel was one of the original founders, and Alaska has hosted 6 times. The last time Alaska hosted the games was in 2014, and the Matsu has never hosted the games, so we're in uncharted territory. We expect about 2,000 athletes or participants to come. They'll be, the original group was Alaska, Northwest Territories, and Yukon, but we've added Nunavut, Greenland, Northern Quebec, which is Nunavik, Northern Alberta, and the indigenous people of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, the Sapmi people. Typically, Yamal, Russia would participate, but given the international nature of things, they will not be participating with us this year. We have heritage sports, Nordic sports, indoor and ice sports. So there is there is certainly going to be something for everyone. The heritage sports are Arctic and Dane Games, and those are in honoring our indigenous people of this region, and competitions that are played or are part of the cultures of people all over the North. The Nordic sports are alpine skiing, biathlon ski and snowshoe, cross-country ski, snowboarding, and snowshoeing. Indoor sports are archery, badminton, basketball, futsal, which is indoor soccer, gymnastics, table tennis, volleyball, and wrestling. And then on ice, we have curling, figure skating, hockey, and short track speed skating. So you can see with all those events, we will be using just about every venue that's available in this region of Alaska. Parallel to the sporting events are cultural events. And we will be celebrating the indigenous cultures of the North through cultural performances in a lot of our public spaces. So each group that comes from around the North will bring a group of performers, and they will be doing cultural performances in public spaces. They will participate in ceremonies. We'll have a gala. There'll be concerts, a fashion show, and winter activities. Just keep going here. So last year, we were just happy it was happening, but we have been in the weeds since then. And so I'm going to update you quickly on how our planning has been going and where we're at. And then there'll be a chance for our general manager to come up, and she'll talk to you a little bit about fundraising and how that's going. And then we'll have questions on the end. So the rest of the presentation is a snapshot of the work that's been done so far. As any giant event like this, we're building it from scratch. It hasn't been here in 10 years. And so we had to start by having a board, and then we had to get our 501c3 nonprofit status. And certainly as our co-hosts in this event, you can be relieved to know that we've gotten insurance for all of our events and all of our venues and our volunteers and our directors. We've gotten a accounting service, so you can know that we have a professional group that is monitoring our books, and then we have a separate group that's doing our auditing. We've developed a budget and logo, brand, and website. We've had a visit from our international committee last January with a signing of our memorandum of agreement. And then we dug into really figuring out where can all these events happen all at the same time, all in 1 week. And so we spent a lot of time sorting out venues and then establishing policies and protocols. Really, it's not flashy, and it's certainly doesn't look like a lot from the outside, but it has really depended on the shared time and talent of all of our partners. So we want to thank the borough. We've had great help in developing all of our agreements from the borough attorney. We've had help with our finances from Cheyenne Heindel. Alex Strawn from planning has helped us out. Ken Barkley is helping us out with emergency planning. The borough has loaned us Russ Kraft for purchasing and Kim Sollian for planning, your planning services manager, and Lita Boris is also from planning on our executive committee. So we've had a lot of support from the borough and expertise as we move forward, and we're very grateful for that. The school district has helped us out by giving us Katie Gardner, who has helped develop our agreement for facility use and then nutrition services, and that has been a huge piece of our planning. And then Kinnick and Chickaloon have helped us out with our whole forward-facing image of the games, from our logo to deciding that we didn't want to have a furry mascot, to choosing what our animal representation would be, and making sure that what we did had local cultural relevance. So our host society, I'm just going to quickly say their names, and if they're here, I'm going to have them give a little wave. These people, out of the goodness of their heart, out of just being solid community-minded professionals, are really leaning into making this happen. And so Lita Boris is our vice chair. Bonnie Hoff is our treasurer. Katie Ellsworth is our cultural programs director. Casey Ressler works with Bonnie, and she's been generous with his time, marketing and public relations. Trent Ferris is here with volunteers and protocol. Jonathan Babbitt is from MTA, and he's our information technology and communications director. Russ is purchasing and contracts. Katie Gardner is our at-large director. Anjanette Steer has a huge job. She is organizing the care and comfort of all these participants that come. Kim Sollian is another at-large director, liaisoning with the borough. Holly Odegaard is in charge of sports, which is a huge job as well. Colin Fay has venues. We're really proud that John Rada, who is here tonight, is he's an ex officio member of our board, but he has recently been elected president of the Arctic Winter Games International Committee. So that's going to be a huge support for us as we go through our planning. And then John Essel is also a director for the International Committee. One of the first things the board did was decided who was going to help us get all this work. All these people who are on the board are volunteers, but there were short-term, time-intensive positions that really required a lot more time than what could be reasonable to expect of volunteers. So we hired Carrie Quaid, who is a professional event planner, and she has been with us since last October. And Holly then came in on as staff. Telsha Overby is our arts and culture coordinator, and we are actually in search of an executive assistant right now. As we get closer to the games, we'll add some other short-term positions, but again, we are really working on keeping our staffing costs low and using volunteers. And you'll see in this presentation that volunteers are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But when it gets to closer to the games, we are going to add a few more people to make sure it comes off well. So the budget, when we did the bid, there were broad brushstrokes, and there was an effort to estimate what things would cost and where the money would come from. But we've been doing a deep dive over the last year. We started by using the Fairbanks 2014 budget and adding 20%, and then we got the inflation numbers, and so of course that was not even enough. So we roughed out a budget, and then we started getting bids and working with our big ticket items like the school district's nutrition services, coming up with menus and coming up with costs. And we feel like we've dialed in pretty close to what an accurate budget is. What I can say about that budget, though, is that we budgeted for if we had to pay retail for everything, if we had to rent every space at what it would cost the general public to rent. And we know that people have been very supportive of us. So the value in kind part of our revenue at 1.5 million, we think that's going to be easy to realize as people get on board with this. People have been very generous in their support. So an example would be we're having events at the Glen Massey, and we went to them to secure the venue, and the Glen Massey said that they would allow us to have our cultural events there at no cost. And so we budgeted for the cost, but the in-kind is they're going to allow us to use that facility. We've also added some things into our expenses for marketing and PR that we've all the merchandise that we're going to be selling is all in marketing and PR, so we'll be recouping a lot of those costs. We have a software company in Canada called GEMS. It's the Games and Event Management System, and their software costs about $228,000 just to use to run the games, but they have donated that to us at $180,000 value in kind. So if you look at the IT and communications, it might be a big number, but most of that is coming back to us as a donation from them. So it's not as, I have to keep telling myself this as somebody who was very concerned about budget when I worked for the school district, that a lot of these numbers are not as terrifying as they seem when you don't have all the money up front. But we still do need to fundraise about 70% of our funds. The padding that we've got in our budget and in our expenses is that we have a plan for a winter carnival at the Alaska State Fairgrounds during the week of Arctic Winter Games. It's spring break for kids in the valley, and so we are hoping that families will come out from Anchorage, that they will attend all of our public events, and that they may go to the state fairgrounds to go on rides, and we'll have activities, but we can certainly put on the games without that. So that's about a $500,000 project that will depend on sponsorships. I imagine that you might, and maybe I'll just pause here. Is there a question about budget before I move on? Because often that is questions that I wouldn't have to scoot back to. No?
Assembly members have questions? No. And I think you got some money from the state, right? I don't know if you mentioned that or not. But.
In revenue, we started with $50,000 left over from the Fairbanks, or donated from the Fairbanks 2014 games. The Borough has generously provided $200,000 on top of tons of expertise, on top of office space, all kinds of helpful things in addition to that. But the state of Alaska, since 1970, has set aside $2 million. So about every 10 years, they give that $2 million to the hosting community. And so we will have that as well. That's hard money as well. Yes. And we got a big chunk of it this year, thanks to the Borough as well. Instead of getting it in smaller pieces, we got a big chunk of it. So it was very helpful. We're going to have 26 different venues, and Colin Fay is our director of venues, and he and his committees have been out there touring sites and meeting with managers and creating venue plans. But we're using school sites, borough sites, city sites, private businesses, and nonprofits. They're pretty much, if you can host an event during that week, we're hoping that we can utilize your area. We have are also hoping that not just shining a positive light on all these areas through Arctic Winter Games, but that maybe there will be a way we can support venue development and as a legacy project, do some venue improvements, especially at Government Peak Recreational Area and Ski Talk are two areas that we're working on. Anjanette Steer is our Director of Care and Comfort, and really each item on this list is a large, complex planning process, and she has a team of volunteers working through all the details. But the way the Arctic Winter Games work is that we have villages for participants, and they're going to be at Palmer Middle and Palmer High and Colony Middle and Colony High. And we have to turn those schools into dormitories. And so that involves moving the furniture out of the classrooms, setting up bunk beds, and then at the end of the week, the school district was very supportive, and one of the most important things we needed was a guarantee of time. And so they set their calendar for us way in advance for that week. So we know that they've added an extra day in front of spring break and after spring break for us to set up and take down. So those kinds of that kind of support is huge in our planning process, and it really signifies that the whole community is on board with making this work. Catering is primarily through the Matsu Borough School District Food Services Program, so they're going to be providing 3 meals a day and sack lunches for all of our participants and our officials during the week. And then we have other agent or businesses that are going to be helping with some of our catering needs for adult things and special, Carrie calls them soirees, right? Which I don't even know those words, but transportation, we're in the RFP stage. The district is getting a new school bus contractor, and so we haven't been in contact with them, but Russ is helping put together our RFP for that. We will have to transport and pick up all these participants from all their villages, take them to their events, bring them back, take them to activities. There's dances, there's concerts, there's swimming opportunities. And so lots of transportation, and the school district has been really helpful with us in even designing what that might look like. Matsu Regional has been helpful, and Dr. Katie Naylor is coordinating our medical needs. We have to plan for COVID, unfortunately. It just seems like it's the gift that keeps on giving. So we'll need to have isolation areas. We have the urgent cares have been promised to us as a place that they will provide medical care for anybody who is injured at the Arctic Winter Games, or if a medical need comes up. So lots of help there, but that's a committee that's working out. And then security, we met with the borough, and they have been very helpful in supporting our efforts with their emergency operations center. And we're going to meet with Director Ken Barkley here at the end of the month and look at that, but we are still looking for a security chair. Finally, we have volunteers. Right now, we have about 150 people who are really in the weeds doing planning. So if you think about that, 150 people who sitting around tables with spreadsheets and facility maps and looking at exits and looking at just all the different the traffic patterns and all the different pieces, it's snow removal. That is happening all the time right now. But we still will need many, many more volunteers. And so we've spent quite a bit of time thinking about how do you get 2,000 people safely volunteering with your youth. And so we have a set of policies that involve background checks, and that if they interact with students, they'll have to participate in safe sports or a similar training to make sure that they can participate with minors safely. But we're looking for village mayors, that people who will be running those schools, ticket takers, security people, just to help with parking and things at each of the venues, set up and take down. There's no shortage of ways to volunteer as we get closer, and there are committee positions. If anyone is interested in planning, there are lots of committee positions that still are out there. So Carrie Quaid is our general manager. As I said, she's a professional event planner, and she has been invaluable to us as we have moved forward. And she's going to come now and talk to you a little bit about marketing and public relations.
And sponsorship and fundraising. Don't forget, I know everybody wants to hear about that. Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to give you this update. I enjoy our meetings every time I get to see you, and Mayor DeVries and Manager Brown, I appreciate the time and opportunity this evening. So Amy, thank you for going through all the work that's been happening. A lot of it is not so flashy, but I get to talk about something that Director Casey Ressler has been wrestling. So marketing and public relations. Since we last saw you, we have launched our website. Phase 1 is up. It's live. It's awg2024.org. You can go there and find out about a lot of things. One of them is sponsorship. But you'll also get to see our branding, logo, and visual identity. We do have it here outside of the chambers on a few banners, as well as within the room. And it premieres our logo, which we are very proud of. As Amy said, we had local input from our local tribes, Chickaloon and Kanik. And our animal ambassador, I think this is the first time you're all seeing this, the chickadee was chosen in conversation with Chickaloon and Kanik as well. And one of the things that it was that struck all of us on the committee when we were talking about it was that the chickadee, when you see a chickadee on the trail, it means a friend is thinking about you. And we're welcoming the world to the Matsu during these games, and we want to welcome our friends and be a friend to them. So we felt that the chickadee was a great animal ambassador for the Matsu 2024 Arctic Winter Games. Through building our brand identity and our logo and our animal ambassador visual imagery, like I said, we do have our website live. Our full phase 2 website will be coming this fall. That will be translatable into Dutch and French as well as English to also have access for our guests that are coming. Through the website, you can click directly to our social media, which is up, live, and running, as well as find information on how to volunteer, how to sponsor, and how to support the games through the Shop to Support page. Facebook fundraisers and our Fred Meyer Community Rewards are 2 of the local options or easy to engage with opportunities to help support us in a financial capacity. Amazon Smiles program will be launching in August, and we look forward to rolling out our merchandise. As you can see, we have our branded wear for our host society board, and it's coming soon to shoppable links on the website as well as hopefully throughout town. Currently, we do have an RFP that Russ Kraft helped us craft through the Committee for Agency of Record, making creating a partnership with one of a local advertising agency, hopefully. That is due at the end of the month, and we're hoping to make that decision the first week in August. For our marketing and public relations partner. This agency will help us put this information out into the world through creating sizzle reels, branded campaigns, short, not film, but short narrated presentation that we can put along with our sponsorship deck. So that gets to the fun stuff that I know everybody's thinking about when they saw that budget. So sponsorship and fundraising is something that kicked off simultaneously with our, oh, thank you, Amy, with our website launch recently. And like I said, there is a link on the website to the sponsorship deck. You can see some of the information of our strategy in sponsorship and fundraising. We have a few sponsors that have joined prior to the sponsorship deck launching, but also since. Nick Hill from Alaska Seal Coating was actually our first sponsor. He has supported since in a in-kind capacity. David Pike from Pike Legal Group was our actual first cash sponsor, which was fantastic. That just came in. We have been shopping that sponsorship deck around. I know that there's been a few companies and organizations that have reached out to us that we have been in contact with. Sponsorships are not the only, corporate sponsorships are not the only method of fundraising that we are implementing. Kim Solian and I have actually been meeting and coming up with sponsorship goals, our pyramid, and crafting our connections, leveraging our networks. With Mr. Pike in particular, it's a contact that I had, but I asked him not only for a cash sponsor, I asked him who is in his network that he could connect me to. So it's not just about our one-on-one connections, but also leveraging the networks that we work within. As Amy had mentioned, in-kind sponsorships are a huge portion of our budget that we have counted in real dollars. As Amy had mentioned, the $180,000 in-kind sponsorship from GEMS was huge, and that is our first in-kind sponsorship from a corporation outside of Alaska. Merchandise, ticket sales, and fundraising events are all local community and broad-based strategies to raise the funds and close the gap on that. Our Fred Meyer Community Rewards kicked off, and it's not the first full quarter. It was a partial quarter, but we did receive our first payment from Fred Meyer, which was very exciting. Individual donors through, like I said, Facebook, but we also have a direct donate link on our website through Square. Easy credit card processing, which is fantastic. They are our merchant services partner. We did kick off a board giving campaign at our last board meeting with success. So that was very exciting as well, and shows that our board members are not only spending their time, which is invaluable, but also their dollars. So the sponsorship opportunity deck is, like I said, located on the website, and it's an easy click through. And as last week, Lita and I actually had a meeting. We were contacted by Senator Murkowski's legislative office in DC, and we had a fantastic conversation with her representative there. We did submit an outline, an overview of our cultural and sporting programs. In the past, her office has participated through fundraising with the 2006 Games in Kenai for infrastructure improvements. So this is a conversation that we were really excited to have with her office in DC and look forward to our follow-up meeting. And as Amy had also mentioned, Matsu Regional with the urgent care support is a massive contribution by allowing participants and coaches and staff to be able to use those facilities. Amy, thank you.
Every time Carrie tells me about fundraising, I get nervous because I don't come from that world, but she tells me that this is not just a reasonable ask, this is completely doable, and she's inspiring when we sit down and plan how to do these things. So where are we going next? Well, besides roughing out where do you get 2,000 bunk beds and all the acquisition of everything, we're moving into a new office in the fall. We toured that in the rain today and set up where that's going to be because we have outgrown our borough office. And we are continuing to learn and gain skills as a board and get better at event planning. So in Canada, there are a lot of opportunities through the Canadian government and their games for us to be a part of and observe the behind the scenes. And we're going to the Canada Games in August. And then we're having the International Committee come here, and they're going to lend their expertise to us. They're going to tour all of our events and our venues and help us out with our planning. We'll be doing presentations to them. And I guess I just share all this because I want you to know that there's multiple opportunities for us to get feedback on our planning, that we just don't trundle off down the way and end up someplace and then find out it doesn't work. Lots of people who have done the games are looking very, very closely at our plans and giving us feedback. And then there are lots of opportunities for us to watch other people put on other games. We're going to Wood Buffalo to see their Arctic Winter Games. In January, we'll be behind the scenes to observe that process. And then after that, people come here and dig into the weeds of what we're doing. So it builds confidence in me that if something's not designed well, if there's any major oversight or issues with our planning, that will be seen. We'll get that feedback. We'll get it corrected. We'll get it fixed early on so that by the time March 2024 comes around, we'll have gone through our emergency plans and our contingency plans and our bad weather plans, and that we will be not caught by surprise by any of those things. As Carrie mentioned, we have lots of chances for people to connect with us. We are looking for volunteers. We want you to just look at our website and celebrate that progress with us. We have a phone number, 745-4AWG. If you are for AWG, you can call that and leave us an encouraging message or answer any questions. If you want to find out more information, hello at awg2024.org will get you networked in to what's happening and how you can be a part of this. If you're from the media, there's an email for you. And if you would like to sponsor there, we can schedule a meeting with you, or you can look at our website and click on those links and we can connect with you on that. That is kind of where we're at. And I would love to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Assembly members, do any of you have questions? Yes, Assembly Person.
I was trying to think of some, but then you covered everything.
Oh, good.
I could think of, but I'm so excited about this event, and I can't believe how quick 2024 is coming up. And I just think it's going to be one of the coolest. We have a lot of cool events, but one of the hugest, coolest events. And just wanted to say thank you to all the people who are stepping up. Like, that's the cool thing about the Valley, to see all the volunteers who come out of the woodwork and put this together. So just super excited about this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Assembly Person McKee.
When the other lady was talking about something in Dutch and French, what were you, I mean, I'm assuming there's 50 other languages as well. Why the Dutch and French? That was curious to me.
So the languages, we're required to have languages that are the first language of the countries that are coming to visit. And so we have French is the Quebec and some of the Canadian teams, and Dutch is our Danish, not Dutch, Danish. I'm thinking, I don't think we have Dutch actually. So Danish is Greenland. And so, and then we usually would do Russia as well, but we're not required since they're not attending.
So are those the only other two?
Those three, yeah, at this time, and then English, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions from the Assembly? No, I think you did very well.
Thank you
So-
very much for this
You're welcome.
opportunity. We sure have been grateful for the borough's support and really consider you our co-host in this, of course, and your expertise has been invaluable to us.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
I'll take it back. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to the Board of Directors. It's been fun to watch this host society kind of get its footing and stand itself up from scratch, really. So it's great to see the community volunteers, and I think you all will be the foundation by which the rest of the community is able to be grafted into this event. So we do very much appreciate all the work that you are giving for the community. So thank you for that. I'm going to shift gears and talk about the state budget update and give you a little bit of insight on where we landed once the governor considered all of his vetoes and kind of where we stand today. So I'm going to start with a couple items that were passed in the state budget that were very much appreciated. The first is the state supported payback of unfunded school bond debt reimbursement for the fiscal years of 2017, 2020, 2021, and 2022. So for Matsu, that equates to approximately $38 million. Additionally, the state supported payback of unfunded port debt reimbursement totaling $2.1 million for the Matsu. Additionally, the state raised the base student allocation by $30. That should result in an approximately $1 million increase for the district this fiscal year. And then going into the capital budget, there were a number of wins there. The first being funding from the state level. It's actually federal funding, but it's allocated through the state for the Matsu First Responder Training Facility. For the Assembly, that means Station 39. So that's that joint fire EMS station here in Palmer that we've been talking about, and that the Assembly already appropriated funding for in the FY22 budget. So we get seeing an additional $8 million to move that project forward. As Ms. Spargo mentioned, we did receive $1 million from the state for the Arctic Winter Games. So that's helpful. Typically, that's done $1 million and then $500,000 for the 2 following years. We actually received $1 million this year, so they kind of moved that forward. So we do appreciate that because that creates some certainty as far as what we will actually receive and honors the state commitment for $2 million. The state also provided $30 million for the 2021 transportation infrastructure package. Do want to be clear that has a contingency associated with it, which basically says, Matsu Borough, you get $30 million when you match it with $30 million from local funds, which is okay. That's a good win for us. And I know our staff down there, John Harris specifically, and our lobbyist worked very hard to help move that. And I'll share, I see Senator Hughes in the back, and some of our state delegation were instrumental in getting that done. There also was a grants to school districts according to the average daily membership. That yields approximately $7.7 million in one-time funds for the district. So all in all, I think Matsu did pretty good in terms of operating and capital budget line items. I did want to share with the Assembly, because you hear those numbers and you think windfall, perhaps. I don't look at it that way. But I want to kind of share with you some of the needs that we may have, or that we know we have, that are coming forward or on the horizon. So number one is the Assembly will be taking up in August the construction of Matsu Central School. That's estimated to be approximately $24 million cost. We also will have the need for a new EMS station in the Willow area. We're going to call that Station 12-9. But that closes a gap between where we stage ambulances now, between Talkeetna and the kind of the Big Lake area. So we've known that's in the DES's 5-year roadmap. So we're looking at approximately $5 million there. That is something we could consider putting funding towards, instead of having to consider a large capital budget item in the future or potential bonding. We also need to finish the Brett Memorial roof replacement. That's approximately $1 million. And then, of course, we've got to come up with a local match for the $30 million that the state provided. Currently, our need to get to that $30 million milestone so we can fully realize the state allocation, our remaining funding needed there is $13.2 million. So just so you're kind of have some context for where we are in getting toward that goal. And I'm gonna run the risk at mentioning the port here, but I think we are going to be prepared in September to talk about the public-private partnership. There's some ideas for some very modest infrastructure investments that would allow us to kind of reshape and redefine some of the business activity that could take place at Port McKenzie. Obviously, with the $2.1 million coming back specifically tied to port debt, that could be something that we may consider later this year. We'll have more details on that, and we'll talk about that in more detail on or projecting at this time on the September 6th regular Assembly meeting. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about briefly, because this is something that it's kind of off the radar, and I know we have a DOT rep in the room tonight, but the Matsu Borough signed agreements with the Department of Transportation for 4 community transportation program projects: Herman Road, Himmer Road, Selden Extension, and Trunk Road Extension. Those are projects that are largely funded by federal dollars through the Department of Transportation, but the borough is responsible for the non-federal match, which is generally about 9%. Well, as the costs for those projects are going up, and they are, as you might expect, everything is, there is a possibility or a potential that we may have to get a little bit more of our non-federal match and bring a little bit more money to the table. We don't know what that looks like yet. I'm just sharing with you, as this money comes in, that would be something to consider, because if those costs do go up and we have to honor those obligations for additional funding, there are some restrictions because of our road service area construct, where we may, if we had more funding that were needed for those projects and we did not have a funding source like the funding the state's just provided, we may have to hit those road service areas, and that would be a very large hit for our road service areas, for those road service areas that support those specific road projects. Seward Meridian Parkway is also another example of that, where the costs are going up, and we already have an obligation to provide that non-federal match as well. So I just want to mention that to the Assembly so it's on your radar. We're going to be monitoring that. We don't have details. We just know those costs are going up. They're outside of our control because we don't have or don't own the design of those projects. But that's something we're going to continue to keep an eye on and coordinate with the Department of Transportation. But one of the reasons I mention that is we may want to consider setting aside a little bit of funding if that were to happen, so those road service areas aren't dealing with that issue. We're talking about larger roads that create connections and support the larger network, not like residential subdivision type roads. So just keep that in mind. And then I wanted to wrap it up. I think we've got 3 members from our state delegation in the room. I hope I didn't miss anyone. I was trying to count you as you walked in the door. But I really do want to take a moment and thank our state legislators and their staff. They were very supportive in working on our priorities, which I think is evidenced by the $1 million for the Arctic Winter Games and the $30 million for Matsu transportation projects. I want to obviously extend our thanks to the governor as well for his proposed budget, which recognized Matsu priorities, and for keeping intact items that were important to the borough during the veto process. So Senator Hughes, Representative McCabe, Representative Eastman, and to the rest of our Valley delegation, we appreciate the support. I know firsthand from conversations that occurred that you were very accommodating and really took into consideration, worked hard behind the scenes to make sure that the Valley saw its fair share. And we really appreciate your work in Juneau, and for John Harrison Consulting. He spent a lot of time in Juneau during the legislative session working to help communicate our priorities as well. So we really appreciate all the work that you've done. All right, I'm going to shift gears again to the emergency services capability demonstration. So one of the things we talked about is we often come to the assembly and ask for appropriations and resources for equipment, training, personnel. And sometimes it's difficult to articulate from here or from the podium what we're trying to accomplish there. So our Director of Emergency Services, Ken Barkley, offered up to host an emergency services capability demonstration at Station 6-2 in Wasilla on Saturday, August 27th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's really meant for our elected officials. We will extend an invitation to our state delegation as well to kind of describe for you what kind of emergency services capabilities we have in the borough, why we resource the things we do, where we're going with regards to that, so you can see it firsthand. You'll have the opportunity to participate in some of these skills stations, or you can observe. So it will focus on common emergency services responses and provide you an opportunity to learn, engage in the services we frequently provide. For example, we'll have a cardiac arrest medical emergency with CPR and advanced life support, a vehicle accident simulation with entrapped victims, fire attack, aerial operations, and a real-time roll-up operation of a training fire showing the coordination required for a successful fire attack on a structure fire. So again, you can observe or participate. If you want to register as a participant, we would like you to make arrangements with Ken and stop by 6-2 in advance to be sized for protective clothing. So if you want to venture out, take that on. We would certainly welcome you to do that. We won't throw any challenges down on public record. George Hayes and I agreed to be your test dummies. So we'll get out there and dress up, and you can run us around ragged and laugh at us as we try to navigate some of the things that our first responders do on a regular basis. So we're going to ask the clerk to advertise that meeting, if that's okay with the assembly, so that we don't have to worry about issues with a quorum. You're welcome to attend, and hopefully you'll find it valuable. We'll also be doing some recordings and sharing that information as just a way to help the community understand some of the services that we do provide. And then lastly, I just want to mention, obviously with the rain, we are monitoring the area waterways. We are aware that there are 3 rivers that are currently, the river gauges are at action level. So we just want to remind folks to be, especially if you live near a waterway in a floodplain or a flood zone or floodway, to be mindful of what this is going to look like. The precipitation will continue through the remainder of the week. That's pretty clear that that's the forecasted expectation. So our DES and Public Works folks will continue to monitor their situation, and will advise as any issues do arise. But I would imagine we'll at least see some elements of flooding here over the next few days. So I just wanted to remind the Assembly of that. I know that was a very long manager's comment report. I apologize, but there were some things we just needed to get out on the record. So thank you for your accommodating. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
No problem. Anybody have any questions of the manager? Okay, Mr. Attorney, do you have a report before you depart?
I don't. I'm going to keep it short tonight. Just information, we did have a new attorney start in our office right after July 4th holiday, Hannah Skedity. I would normally introduce her. She's under the weather, so she's at home tonight. And then, as I mentioned to the mayor last week, or I believe the week before, for anybody who's kind of following borough events, about 40 years ago, there was a gentleman named Lee Sharp who was a borough attorney at the time. And we got word a couple of weeks ago he passed away in the Pacific Northwest. So I wanted to acknowledge him and the work he did for the borough and keep his family in our prayers. And then, as the mayor alluded, I'll be out for the next couple weeks. Mr. Aschenbrenner will be running our office, and somebody from my office will be staffing the meetings. I will be back for the second meeting in August, unless I get stuck due to air travel concerns, and then I will suffer on a Greek island, and I'll be back later.
Are you stretching it a little bit, sir, by suffering
Well-
on a Greek island? Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, do you have a report?
I do. The canvas board got done canvassing the absentee by mail and absentee in person ballots yesterday. They started the question this morning. I'll know more tomorrow, but it looks like Friday the review board will be coming into count. And then the clerk's report is in your red folder, has the upcoming meeting schedule, the pertinent election dates for the November election. Also attached to that is next Tuesday's election certification agenda. And it's been suggested that the August 16th meeting, which is the same date as the state primary, because this room's going to be cut in half, the back will be an election or precinct, that meeting get moved to Wednesday, August 17th. Is that something the assembly would like to do?
Are there any objections from the assembly? I see. Does anyone have any problem regarding moving that? Okay. Because if tonight we only had half of the assembly room, we would not have enough room for people, so. But, okay, so is there any objections for the clerk to do that, to go ahead and advertise that and plan? Everybody's okay? Go ahead. Anything else, ma'am?
I do believe Assembly Member Yount.
Oh, thank you.
Respectfully, I would like to request that we move the second meeting in September from the third Tuesday to the fourth Tuesday, which would be moving from September 20th to the 27th to accommodate for moose season.
Is there any objection to the request? As long as he shares the moose meat, right? We'll let you set up on the parking lot there and then cook us some or something. I don't hear any objection, Madam Clerk. Yeah. Do you have anything else for your report?
That is it, Madam Mayor.
Okay. We have a number of citizens and other correspondence that's included in the agenda. Is there any comments on the citizens and other correspondence from any of the assembly members? Okay, hearing none, they are presented. No. We have a number of boards and commissions that meet, community councils, road service areas, things like that. And what these are is a lot of the meeting minutes from those organizations that are put into the packet, which is public information. And then sometimes the assembly will have something to add to those, especially if it's in maybe their assembly district or something. Okay. And Madam Clerk, do you have some IMs to read into the record?
I do. I am 22-153, informing the Assembly of the manager's intent to consent to the sublease between Renewable IPP LLC and Energy 49 LLC for the Houston Solar Farm Phase 1 development. I am 22-156, reporting manager waivers of formal bidding procedures in accordance with MSB 38320B for June 2022.
Are there any comments on the IMs? I don't see any. Thank you. Hearing none, then the IMs are presented. Special orders, we do not have any special requests from people to be heard. The next item is public hearings. Madam Clerk, would you read the first public hearing, please?
Ordinance 22057, an ordinance amending MSB 43515, purpose and scope to reference the 2022 subdivision construction manual. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
And I see we have staff, so we must have a staff report. Sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly. Alex Strawn, Planning Director for the Matsu Borough. This ordinance that is before you is an update to the subdivision construction manual. Essentially, any development that occurs after following a subdivision through our platting board requires that roads be constructed in accordance with our subdivision construction manual. This manual was originally adopted in 1983 and was updated a couple times. But in 2020, we had a major effort to do a big revision to the subdivision construction manual. There's huge changes that hadn't really, there hadn't been changes for over 30 years. In January, I was asked to put together a working group because after working with the new manual for about a year, it was identified that there was changes that needed to occur. So I put together a working group of people that consisted of developers and engineers and surveyors, as well as borough staff. We met a few times. There was some negotiation. There was some give and take. But ultimately, we came up with a document that everybody on the group could agree with. The borough came with changes that we wanted to see, and the developers came with changes they wanted to see. And those changes are reflected in the document that you have before you. One of the big changes is it allows drainage basins to be located within utility easements. That was a request of the developers. We worked with MEA to come up with language that would work for them. We also notified all of the utility companies that these changes were being considered. And so we didn't receive any objection from any of the utility companies on that. Other than that, it does a lot of cleanup. It changes definitions to make sure that it's readable. It modifies some timeframes to ensure that there's certainty in the process, so that the borough has certainty, so that developers have certainty. And ultimately, it's a very simple ordinance that changes Title 43 to the 2022 manual, which is what is before you today.
Questions from somebody? Yes. Assemblyperson Yacht, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to personally say thanks. We spent thousands of hours on this a few years ago, and I feel guilty that we didn't catch it all, but no matter how many hours we put into it, there's going to be some small stuff slip through the cracks. And so I know how much hard work went into this, and I appreciate what you guys did. So thank you.
Questions or comments? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
That's an amazing stack of papers. I got to tell you about the charts, the maps, and that sort of thing. It looked like every one of them a plate of spaghetti. I couldn't quite tell where the spaghetti started and where it ended up. Is there any way at any point when these things actually come forward for action that those things can be, I don't know, cleared up?
Yeah, so this is a really complicated document.
Yeah.
It's there are many hours that went into putting this together, and honestly, my job was to bring everybody together and facilitate the process. Within those meetings, there was a lot of back and forth, engineers talking to engineers and getting way deep into the weeds. I don't think you can avoid it being a technical document that it's difficult to understand, but we absolutely could, like, if we wanted to host a work session, like say at the Joint Planning Commission Assembly meeting or something like that, we could try to decipher some of the things that are in there. But it's all stuff that people who are building roads and engineers understand this stuff. And it's a lot of what this change does is actually very much clarifies what is required, because we're getting submittals that are sort of all across the board. And this says this is what is required and this is how you're supposed to do it.
One thing that I really did was really clear, and that's where you had the comments section by the folks, and then in the area, and that was right on. So when is this just, what does this thing do that you just?
Yeah, so when you have a big piece of land, you hire a surveyor to carve it all up and bring it to the platting board. It gets approved by the platting board. Once that has been approved by the platting board, the actual roads need to be built in order for the plat to record. And so those roads need to be developed in a manner that is in accordance with this manual.
And so as each one of these projects comes up, then it will be discussed at that time, or is it a done deal now?
This is the roadmap for the developer to build the roads and install the utilities and everything like that. So I don't know if I quite understand.
Well, for instance, I was looking at the Gateway Community Council. Stephanie Nowers had a report in there, and as did Bill Kendick for the Connect Fairview Loop, and then which were very clear as to what the communities wanted. And then I saw something a little bit later by a guy named Scott Thomas with Department of Transportation and said, no, let's do it a different way. And I thought, what? So as these things come closer,
Okay.
we're going to go through them again, or is what we got in this Bible that basically it?
So, so this, you might be confusing this with the official streets and highways plan, which is going to come up in a little bit, which shows us future road corridors and things like that. This is different than that.
Okay,
And it's specifications for road building, basically.
got it.
Okay, follow up? No? Okay, all righty. I think that's it. Thank you, sir. So now I will open the public hearing. And the testimony at this point in our meeting is testimony only for ordinance 22-057. So if anyone would like to testify for or against or give the assembly some different directions regarding that ordinance, you're welcome to come forth. We didn't have anybody sign up? Okay. And even if you didn't sign up, you're still welcome to come and address the assembly. Okay, Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay. One last chance then. Anyone in the audience that would like to address the assembly on ordinance 22-057? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-057.
Discussion, assembly discussion? Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, and then,
So, through the mayor to, I guess, the Public Works Director, or who would we address these to? Planning? So I
depends on the
noticed
question, sir, I guess.
the official Streets and Highways plan has a different calculation for total daily trips by road classification, and I was wondering if there's been a change to the ADT calculation, or if that was just a mistake in that plan versus this one.
I see the staff back there discussing amongst themselves, and here comes someone. Oh, yeah, two someones. This is a hard question you asked, Deputy Mayor. You have to have two people.
Hello, I'm Adam Bradway. I'm a planner with the Matsu Borough, and I'll be speaking to the official Streets and Highways plan next. But I think you might be referencing Public Works caught a discrepancy with the numbers in the official Streets and Highways plan related to ADT and the subdivision construction manual. So within the official Streets and Highways plan document, there was a discrepancy, and so I believe we put forward a potential motion to make that clerical change for the official Streets and Highways plan.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So I guess my question was the official Streets and Highways plan based on an old calculation method, and that this has a different calculation method, or was that just a complete error?
No, it was just a clerical mathematical error in the official Streets and Highways plan. The table in the official Streets and Highways plan was meant to be exactly the same as the subdivision construction manual, and it should be if we make the change that's proposed.
Assemblyperson Yount, do you still have a question?
I did want to mention that the minor changes that are in this new draft, if it affects any, it will probably make things a little bit easier to understand for existing or subdivisions that are already in place, and they will have the opportunity to then use this manual in these changes. So did want to mention that. So
Okay. Further discussion by the assembly? Is there any objections to the legislation? Seeing and hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22063, an ordinance repealing MSB 1530 Official Streets and Highways Plan Map, amending MSB 1755-4 by striking the unused definition of official streets and highway plan, and adopting MSB 152430B46 Official Streets and Highway Plan 2022 update. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Okay, do we have staff report? Adam?
Hello again. I'll be up here a few times tonight, but this is the official streets and highways plan update. I, along with Kim Solian, worked on this with a contractor, and so we gave a lengthier presentation at your last meeting in June. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but just sort of high level. This is an update to the 2007 official streets and highways plan. And so there is a plan in place right now. We went through and made a lot of positive changes to that document, including an implementation plan, adding functional classifications for the roadways, and also primary intersections. This is a very important transportation planning document, and it's essentially an idealized map of when the borough grows, what the idealized road network will be in those areas. So some of these roads might not get built for a very long time. It's essentially based on where development's going. This is key to planning for our future road corridors. Most of the projects that ended up on the most recent transportation bond probably started in the official streets and highways plan. They got raised to priority status and ended up getting funded. And then we received about 30 comments, and we responded to all of them. And so that is all documented in your packet, what those comments and responses were. There were comments that were general opposition to new roads. We, in general, think that planning for these roads is really important. A lot of these roads will not get built soon, and there's a big process with building a road, so there's plenty of opportunity for the public to get involved as those projects move past this planning stage. There were suggestions for alternative routes, which we considered and oftentimes added to this. And then there were some maintenance questions that we directed to the appropriate people. The legislation in front of you is essentially, I know the title is a little confusing, but there were some old outdated requirements for holding a paper map. And so this is essentially approving this plan and moving it forward. So thank you for your time. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Questions, assembly questions to staff? Okay, I guess not. Thank you, sir. And so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. This public hearing is on ordinance 22-063. Anyone in the, do we have a sign-up sheet? No. Okay. Anyone in the audience that would like to testify on this ordinance? Caleb, anybody online? No. Okay. Oh, yes. Come forth, sir.
I can blame the gentleman that just spoke for inviting me tonight. My name is Bill Tucker. I happen to represent property owners on the Parks Highway in the heart of the core of the valley. And very briefly, this document is intended to provide long-term guidance in where the roads go. And if one looks carefully at the Parks Highway and the railroad, one finds that the core of the valley is basically split in half. You can go literally from Trunk Road to the point where the Parks Highway goes over the railroad, 9.5 miles. And in that entire distance, you'll find effectively 3 ways to get from the north to the south half of the valley. 3 ways. And only one of them, only 50%, is above railroad grade. The rest are on railroad grade. The area that we are in, excuse me, is in the eastern half of that area. The only way to get north-south there is a combination of the Fairview coming from the east, Seward Meridian coming from the west to the trunk road. Trunk road goes to the Fairview, intersects at a 16% grade, 4 car lengths from a 45-degree angle railroad crossing. Pretty impressive. Now, the suggestion that we had, we were asked by the borough, actually, I've made two suggestions. Back in 1985, we had suggested that the Fairview be realigned to go over the railroad tracks at the old mat up on the road, and then take the old Fairview and tie it in at the top of the hill, thereby giving one legitimate above grade crossing back into that neck of the woods. The borough planning director at the time, the borough public works director at the time, liked the idea. We took it to the DOT, we took it to the railroad. They approved. It was supposed to go on something called a 6-year plan. And in 1986, there was a little kerfluffle amongst our economy, and that whole thing went out the window. So it went on the shelf. Now, in roughly 2008, we were asked by the Duffy administration's Public Works Department to see if we could find a way to get safely to the school site, which we did. But it turns out that something else was of interest. And at that time, we were told that this opportunity was not chosen because it didn't access the Fairview. It instead went over the top of both the railroad and the Fairview. And I have this stuff here with me, which will kind of show you what I'm talking about if I can do this quickly. I'm assuming I'm about to run out of time.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
And I'm not, by the way, I think the gentleman to my right is very familiar with this and didn't seem to have an objection to it being incorporated. But basically what this does is, I mean, you've got 4.5 miles with only one fairly lousy method of getting north and south. And very specifically, the OS&HP is intended to identify needed future opportunities. This provides the access that provides route to the school site. Also provides exit for the 12 to 1,400 future homes that are going to be down there. The other one that basically eliminates the need for the on-grade crossing and the crazy old mat intersection provides access for the rest of the southern portion of the valley in this area. What is in the plan today indicates no interest in north-south connectivity at all. The only thing that approximates it is a proposal to go on grade from the ranch subdivision, extending Nelson Road to on grade across the tracks to a T intersection with a Fairview. And it is justified as the least cost solution. In fact, obviously nobody costed it, because if you did that, you'd find out it is the most costly solution by any metric. It would be nice if this stuff were at least included so that the DOT could see it when the time arose. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sorry it took so long.
Do we have that map we do have that map, I just asked the manager if we did have that map in our administration, and he said we do, so.
Sure.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I mean, if it could be incorporated, the DOT would be happy to consider. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That's it.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on ordinance 22-063? Caleb? Still nobody? Okay, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-063.
Is there discussion by the assembly? Is there any objection? Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So perhaps we could hear about the plans for Fairview Loop from somebody in planning as far as at grade versus above grade crossings in the future.
Today in an email from Brooks, I got, and I forwarded it to you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or not, regarding Fairview Loop and the some walkways, some realignment that they have. Senator Hughes, I also sent that to you. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. And that might be something you'd be aware of also. So I can make that available to Lonnie so she can send it out to all of the assembly people. But I'm not sure that answers the mayor's, deputy mayor's question. Adam, do you have information?
So there's quite a bit written up. I have discussed with Mr. Tucker, along with a few other people in the borough staff, some of these different plans for this area. It's a pretty complex area, like he was saying, with the railroad and Nelson Road, Fairview Loop, all in one space. So there is a detailed write-up, a memo from staff about the choices that we chose versus some of the other alternatives. There was a really in-depth study done in 2009 by Lounsbury and Associates for which ended up being the new Nelson Road that got built. So there's quite a bit of information about that area. We chose, there's actually two different routes that are identified in the official streets and highways plan, which are essentially what we determined was the lowest cost solution and what we determined was likely the best cost solution, or the best solution for the area, which is extending Nelson Road west to intersect Fairview Loop, not going across the railroad grade. And then there have been plans to extend Seward Meridian south down to Fairview Loop, which would be, that's also in this plan, and that's considered probably the most effective north-south connection in that area. So there's lots of information in your packet related to that, and if you have more specific questions, I can answer.
Follow-up question, Deputy Mayor? Nope. Yeah.
So in
Go ahead,
in the
sir.
memo, it seems that it's primarily just a matter of cost, right? Because it's 21 million versus 8 million or something along those lines.
Yeah, so there's cost estimates for all of the different alternatives that are laid out in the memo. So we chose a higher cost solution, which is the Linloo connection that I was speaking about that goes and extends Nelson Road west. And if you'd like, I can pull up a map on the screens if that's helpful, but all of this has some maps in the packet as well. So there's cost is really the largest factor because $20 million, $25 million project is pretty substantial. You could break it up potentially, but we wanted to give the assembly two of the best options, one being a low cost solution and one being a higher cost solution.
Follow-up, Deputy Mayor? No? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I'm really out of my element as far as this engineering and all this thing is concerned, but in either of the two plans that you are putting forth, do they involve those couple of enormous overpasses? Does either one of those or both?
So the plan I believe you're referring to is the map that Mr. Tucker showed, which would have two grade separated crossings of the railroad, so two overpasses of the railroad. Neither of the two suggestions that we put in this plan have an overpass included in them, again, because generally those bridges cost quite a bit of money.
And so you'll have one of the plans is to connect, which will be, would you say something like 4.5 miles without connecting? I think Mr. Tucker may have said that, connecting with Seward Meridian, the only way to get through, where will that pick up? Off Fairview Loop, what?
So it's in one of these maps. I think it maybe is map 12 in the back of this map 13. Essentially, it'd be extending Seward Meridian directly south. So it comes into Fairview Loop somewhere on that eastern side of Fairview Loop.
It's the somewhere that I'm wondering about.
Yeah.
Where,
Okay. I can try and find it and
My
give you
backyard
more
or what?
specifics. And I also, again, can go and pull up my computer and bring this up on the screen. I don't have the exact road names because these maps are too small. Would you like me to pull it up for you?
yeah,
Okay.
thanks. And this is where I was talking about the plate of spaghetti thing. It's just really
Yep.
hard to,
I totally
Sorry?
understand.
oh yeah, that's a good place.
Yeah, essentially we go directly south from the movie theater. Let's see. And let's see if we can get this figured out. We just hooked this up today. Okay. So this is the area we're talking about. Oops, sorry. As you can see, right around where my cursor is here is the extension, the proposed extension of Seward Meridian South. And then these are the two connections that we're speaking about, extending Nelson.
Does either one of, does that involve any way, we've been talking about the Valley Block and Concrete going through there instead of Abbey Boulevard. Is that in this?
Yep.
thing?
So that's this extension of Nelson right here. This is the Valley Block and Concrete, the gray area here that looks like a gravel pit.
Just a little aside, that's really good to hear because 27 years ago, we worked really, really hard in our neighborhood to get it not going through Lynn Snow Peak. And we worked really, really hard not to get it through Abbey. I think we must have worked harder because it ended up going through Abbey, but we thought Valley Block and Concrete was going to come into play, and I'm really glad to see that it is. Thank you.
Okay, follow up, Assembly? No, okay. Any further discussions from the Assembly members? Is there any objections to the legislation passing? Sorry, that's okay. Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Okay.
Ordinance 22081, an ordinance waiving the requirements of MSB 19820, location of school buildings, waiving the requirements of MSB 19823, site approval process for lease of charter schools facilities, and approving the location of Connect Charter School at the 4401 Palmer Wasilla Highway. You're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Go ahead. Hello again.
I'm back again to speak about this ordinance. And the district is here too, so they might have other things to add. But essentially, the district approached the borough about school site selection. Ultimately, the borough assembly are the group that decides where schools are sited for the Matsu Borough School District. So essentially, there's a new charter school being proposed. It was originally called Connect Charter School. I believe some of the documents, it's now Denaina Blended Learning Academy. It's gotten itself a name. So those are both in this legislation. So ultimately, the assembly is the decider, but there is policy and code related to how school sites are selected. So in Borough Code in 19-08 is essentially where all the process for school site selection lives. I do want to note that charter schools have a little bit less stringent of a school site selection process. Essentially, it goes out for RFP, and then the different sites are compared against each other. For a permanent school, you go through the site selection committee. So just a clarification that it's a little bit less. It wouldn't go through the site selection committee. And so the district approached us about waiving these requirements, which is what the legislation is in front of you. Connect Tribe has offered up a parcel and a building along the Palmer-Wasilla Highway, which is at this address, 4401 Palmer-Wasilla Highway. They are currently renovating it to be a school and are offering it to the Borough School District at or below fair market value. So there was a request to waive the process. We did speak with the district and say, you know, the site selection process usually thinks about planning and transportation and life safety issues with these school sites. So we asked them to go forward and do some of that work and research on their own if they wanted this to be waived, so that you all could see that the due diligence has been done. So in the packet is a report about the facility, its structure, fire and life safety. They also provided a site map with where water and wastewater is going to be. They expressed the point about cost, which is that it's being offered at or below fair market value. And then for traffic, I believe the district is in communication with DOT to get an updated TIA for that site, because a lot of times schools create a lot of traffic, and so that's one of the larger concerns we had. So in general, they've covered quite a few of those bases that the site selection process would. So that's all I have, and I can answer questions, and I don't know if the district has others. So.
Any questions of staff? Okay, hearing none, I will go ahead and open the public hearing, and anyone is welcome to testify on ordinance 22-081. We don't have a sign-up sheet? No. Okay. Anyone that wants to testify on that ordinance? Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay, one last chance. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-081.
Discussion? Yes. Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
I just had a question. I mean, traffic is a huge issue. This is right on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway. And what I heard was that we don't have a TIA yet from DOT. So I just wondered, process-wise, if we waive this requirement and move forward and we get a TIA from DOT that raises concerns about traffic, where does this process go? Do we have another step to reconsider?
Go ahead, sir.
So I know Tony Weiss with the Borough School District is in direct communication with DOT about this, so he can answer more specifically. I don't know that he's here, but essentially there is a driveway permit from DOT to go onto the Palmer-Wasilla Highway currently from this building, but because it's a change in use and considerably more traffic potentially, they have to get an updated driveway permit. So essentially, if there's an issue with the findings from that TIA, then they will have to make changes. Otherwise, DOT will not allow them a driveway permit. And so they're sort of then held accountable to DOT, not necessarily to the borough, but they have to make the changes to improve the intersection to the standard.
Okay. You have some input, sir? Yeah, come forward.
Thank you, Mayor DeVries. Luke Fulp, Deputy Superintendent for the record. We're currently working with Alaska DOT, but the current plan for the school district is to access the school site off of North Shoreline Road or Country Fair Road behind the parcel as well. So it will not be direct access on and off of the Palmer-Wasilla Highway for school for students, parents, students, and also our school buses.
Okay, thank you.
Just one follow-up question.
Yes, go ahead,
The
follow
main
up.
way to access it is off those other roads, but there is a driveway that will access the Palmer Wasilla.
Through the
Go ahead,
chair, Assemblymember Nowers, that's correct. So co-located with the Connect Charter School is going to be a preschool program that's run by Connect Tribe, and access to the preschool facility will be off the Palmer Wasilla Highway. However, the K-12 program for Matsu Borough School District's charter school will be off of either North Shoreline or Country Fair Road.
Okay. Assemblyperson, no, okay. Deputy Mayor then?
So through the mayor, will that building require sprinklers for that occupancy, and does it presently have them? I don't think that's anywhere near city water, so you probably need substantial storage.
For occupancy, I believe it will have sprinklers. We have Carl Chambly here. He's with Connect Tribal Council, and he can answer some of those questions. But the building assessment was done by Wolf Architecture. So,
Carl Chambly, Connect Tribe. So there is a sprinkler system. There's a big holding tank that's been built in addition onto the current building for sprinkler systems. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
So
Assemblyperson.
This
Marbury?
property they're talking about is the MTA's greenhouses and stuff. That's going to be the new school there for the Native children.
Okay, thank you.
And it does have good access, got the light there, and it's going to be really nice.
Mhm. Assemblyperson McKee, did you have a question?
Yeah, just briefly, I was talking to folks from Birch Tree Charter, and I've mentioned it before about how people couldn't actually get into their driveways because the cars were so lined up twice a day, delivering the kids to school. Is
Mhm.
that part of what DOT is going to be looking at when?
Go ahead.
yes, through the mayor. Yes, that's correct. So that's part of the traffic impact analysis study. We encourage folks to ride the bus. That's one way to do it, is to alleviate some of the traffic, but there is congestion when too many people are transporting their own students to and from school. It's a short window. We're working to try to make sure that on site that there's adequate circulation, so there'd be enough room for a drop-off loop, pickup drop-off loop, and we think that it can facilitate for that for the size of the school.
Maybe it doesn't make any sense because I'm not involved in it, but you know how we stand there, the crossing guard holds his hand up and the cars stop, and would that ever be considered? It's pretty simplistic, but it would work maybe. Is that part of, would that be considered?
Yes, the schools are responsible for that type of on-site circulation, so there will be school staff that will be helping assist. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion by the Assembly. Okay, any objection to the legislation? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. The next item on our, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we had an amendment for ordinance 22063. I would ask the deputy mayor if he would, I don't know what the right procedural call, if it's a motion to amend or a reconsideration, I defer to the clerk.
Madam Mayor, I move to amend something previously adopted.
You have to reconsider it, Assemblymember
Oh.
Sumner. It's not in order until you reconsider.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a
I move to reconsider ordinance 22-063.
okay, is any objections to the reconsideration? Okay, I don't see or hear any. So Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I move to amend IM 22-118, page 16 of the official streets and highways plan as follows. Table 2 by striking the number 50 and inserting the number 40 in its place. And table 2 by striking the number 150 and inserting the number 100 in its place. It just adjusts the what's labeled the approximate household count to what the actual traffic count would be.
Okay, discussion. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Just so the public understands what's happening. So this corrects the clerical error that was discussed earlier in the meeting that we had an amendment prep for. So just so folks understand what we're doing.
Okay. Further discussion on the amendment? Any objection to passing the amendment? Okay, hearing no objection, then the amendment is passed.
We gotta pass the main motion.
And so we'll go back to the AM 22-063 discussion as amended. Hearing no discussion, then any objection to the passing as amended? Okay, seeing none, then the legislation has been passed as amended. Okay. The next item on our agenda is audience participation, and we do have a number of people that have signed up for the audience participation. Normally, we take a break about 8 o'clock, but I think in the audience, so rather than break in the middle of the audience participation, let me poll the assembly and see if they want to take a break now or after the audience participation. Now? No? Okay, so let's see, so let's come back at 7:45. That gives us about 7 minutes. Thank you. Order, please. Okay, I'm going to call the assembly meeting back to order. And I do have a list of audience participation. And for those of you that haven't been here before, what we will do is we will call the names and then you come forth. You have 3 minutes to impart to the assembly your thoughts on any item, whether it's on the agenda or not. And then when we're done with the people that have signed up, we will give an opportunity for anyone that didn't sign up that wants to testify. And then we'll go online to find out if there's anybody online that wants to testify. So that's the game plan. So the first person I have is Donna DeFesco. Hello.
Okay, it's a little high for me. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Good evening. My name is Donna Cowart DeFesco. The Burma Road Underpass has become quite the spectacle from the ground as well as the air. In support of the project, the largest contiguous clearing next to Burma Road, the borough cleared 100 feet by 600 feet. You cleared 5 times the width of the road that you wanted to go under in the first place. The borough has cleared so much of my property, I have aircraft circling over it. By approving and funding the Burma Road Underpass project last year, it appears that 5 members of this current assembly chose to put the Matsu Borough on the leading edge of asserting rights on RS 2477 right-of-ways. In March of last year, before the underpass project started, the courts ruled in Otna versus State of Alaska that RS 2477 rights are limited in scope. I want private property owners and voters to know RS 2477 right-of-ways give the public nothing more than the right of ingress and egress between points of commerce. Clearing and development of a 100-foot RS 2477 easement for recreation violates the law. RS 2477s are for highways. They do not allow recreational use. Property owners and voters need to know that it appears that a special interest group, the borough and state, are teaming together in order to destroy private property in favor of recreation development, despite court orders to the contrary. Clearly, on the ground, physical evidence shows the Iditarod Trail, Route 20A, located 4 miles north of my property. The Burma Road Underpass project was planned, organized assault of my private property and rights. The borough is the tool that was used to destroy my property. I have been informed on how to submit complaint forms, and so you can expect a complaint for a big cleanup on Isle Underpass. The borough needs to post signs to educate the public. The signs need to clearly state no recreation, no dog walking, no sports events, no hunting, no berry picking, no wood gathering, no gravel removal, and no aircraft landings except in case of emergencies. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Russ?
My name is Russ DeFesco. My wife Donna and I own a parcel of the property upon which the Burma Road Underpass project was constructed. We remain 100% convinced that the trail is mislocated, and you all have been presented with the evidence, most of which is from the borough's own data proving that. The project has devastated the integrity of our historic homestead, destroyed our privacy, and significantly diminished our property values. Construction on the project actually began before the state's permit and notice to proceed was issued and the appeal process allowed to run its course. You can imagine our shock to visit the property days before the permit date, only to find that a vast area had already been cleared and the topsoil removed. We did manage to contact the contractor in time to save some of the timber and all of the gravel, but many of our resources were already illegally removed or destroyed. We immediately filed an appeal. However, the state allowed the project to proceed while the appeal is still being considered. Now, with unfettered public access, we are facing increased trespassing and the theft of timber from our property. Many of our neighbors have also reported trespassing near the project as well. If you've been to the site, you'll notice that many surrounding property owners have erected fencing and other barriers and even included video surveillance to prevent some of these problems. There is even at least one website and an accompanying video or YouTube video that now falsely claims that the trail is part of the congressionally designated Iditarod National Historic Trail. That is demonstrably false. We requested a meeting with our local representative of this assembly to discuss some of these issues. He picked the date, the time, and the location to meet. Donna, her sister, and husband drove to the Big Lake Library for the meeting, but he did not show up and did not even have the decency to explain, cancel, or reschedule the meeting. He just blew us off. Now, even while the larger appeal is under consideration, a discussion and resolution is needed to compensate us for the resources illegally destroyed or removed from our property. We need some official signage to inform the public that the trail crosses private property. No shooting, hunting, firewood gathering, etc. is allowed, and users must remain on the trail. We believe the borough's billboard ordinance prevents us from posting such official signage, and that should be your responsibility in any case. We need you to stop blowing us off and do your job, do the right thing, and fix the problems you have created. Thank you.
Thank you. Rod Schultz.
My name is Rod Schultz. I live out of Butte. And what I got to talk about, maybe I'm at the wrong meeting because what I'm going to say ain't got nothing to do with what's been said so far today.
Audience
so-
participation is for any item that anybody would
Good.
like to talk to regarding the assembly. It doesn't have to be on the agenda. So go
Good.
ahead, sir.
Well, then with the days of political identity, I can identify as an old geezer. What my topic here is voting machines. I kind of remember the day when you had election day, not election month. And when you went there, you put the X on the paper and you handed it in. And then when at the end of the day, they counted them by hand. Now you got this machine. You put it in, there's no ignition switch on it, there's no gear shifter, there's no nothing. So you don't know what kind of a machine it is, let alone do I know what my vote counted for. I'd like to see those voting machines eliminated. Smash them. Get rid of them, unless people don't know how to put an X on a paper anymore. Or maybe people don't know how to count, the ones that you got hired to count them. You take 2-3 weeks to count the votes as it is with the machine. Can't you do it quicker by hand? I'd like to see them things gone and get it down to election day. One day, you go there on election day, you do your voting by hand, they count it by hand, they have the results probably in a few hours. If it takes a couple of days, that's okay. It'd be probably still faster than the machines you got now. So if we could just do that, then we wouldn't have to take the next step and say, like for Easter, maybe we could have a month of early Easter, Easter Day, late Easter Day, absentee Easter Day. Or maybe we can have 2 Easter days. 2 people can have it at the same time. Anyway, get rid of these machines, will you? Let's get back to being civil and decent and honest, okay?
Thanks, Rod. Karen Lewis. Karen? You're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Manager Brown and all the assembly. I am ditto, okay? My name's Karen Lewis. I've lived here for 37 years. Very honored to live here, privileged to live here. I own my own business. I'm a real estate broker. We can't rely on voting machines to have the vulnerabilities preventing safe, secure, and fair elections. They have too many. I mean, it's been proven over and over. Anybody that's looked can see that. I mean, there's a whole lot of things to look at. If you haven't looked, then shame on you. You should look. You need to look into this because it's the most important thing we're looking at in our nation. And here at the Borough, this is right now, right here about the Borough. What I'm here to do is to introduce what is in your packet. I don't know why I need to, but I'm going to. The action necessary for the Assembly is to get rid of the voting machines in the Matsu. That's the action call here. The following is a summary of documents sent to the Assembly for review. Number one, Brian Endel's presentation to Lieutenant Governor, given on June 1st, 2020. The file name is Kevin Meyer, presentation Lieutenant Governor. Number two, file name, election statement from the Borough Clerk, which came from the Borough Clerk. Number three, article by Patrick Colbeck, file name, modem chips embedded in voting system computer motherboards. Number four, Texas evaluation of Dominion machines in 2019, where they rejected them. The file name is Jan 29, 2019, Meckler, Texas SOS evaluation Dominion.pdf. Number five, Texas summary statement rejecting all Dominion machines evaluated. Smart. The file name is Texas SOS text conclusion. Number six, MSB code that will most likely need changing to remove electronic voting machines. File name, MSB code changes voting machines. Number seven, TCL, Alcatel phones used to get election machines on internet. File name, absolute interference, cybersecurity experts, Chinese cyberware attacks flipped US election. Number eight, video link for many expert and political quotes. That's a good one. File name is full video, hacking America's computerized voting machines. Link to video included in document. Number nine, DOE precinct scanner guide, file name T04.pdf. Number 10, Brian Endel's testimony to the Assembly. Number 11, Kevin Meyer reference on type of voting machine, July 24th, 2020. The file name is RE voting machines, Lieutenant Governor in parentheses. Number 12, file name politicians discredit voting machines. One more. Number 13, file name experts testify on voting machines. So please review them. Please look at anything you can get your hands on what happened to our nation. There's a whole lot of cheating that went on. Please review everything you can get your hands on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Bowles.
Mayor DeVries, Assembly members, thank you for allowing me to speak. So I'm also going to address the issue with voting machines. I would ask that you please remove them. I've got a list of facts that I'd like to read to you, and if I have time, hopefully some other information. So I've got 10 facts here, and these are all vetted. This isn't social media pulled from Facebook and other stuff. This is actual accurate information. So number one, all election machines can be compromised. This is a fact, not a theory. Number two, voting machines can be accessed through the internet without most people even knowing. Number three, modems actually allow voting machines to be accessed on the internet through other equipment. Number four, children can hack voting machines and have been doing so for years at DEF CON events. Number five, election machines are not built to detect and report intrusion. Election machines logs or the history of their events will not show on malware attacks. The logs can easily be deleted or rewritten. Number six, information on hacking machines is readily available on the internet. Brian Endel, as previous speakers said, gave you that information. Number seven, hackers testing machines have created viruses that spread from machine to machine, silently change election outcomes. Number eight, an attacker can break into the EMS workstation and infect all memory cards of the machines for an election in a given area covered by the EMS and change election results in any number of ways. Number 9, a device known as a Stingray can masquerade as a cell tower and intercept modem signals. If an attacker was near a voting location where a voting machine modem was used, it could intercept the transmission and manipulate the election for a future one. And number 10, one quote from a Georgetown professor states that it's simply beyond the state of the art to build software systems that can reliably withstand a targeted attack by a determined adversary in this kind of environment. Okay, so I've got a list of names here. These are vetted names on both sides of the political fence. One person I want to point out is a former staff member under the Obama administration. I'll skip to this person because I don't want it to seem one-sided. Douglas Lute. After compromising a machine, hacker could manipulate the outcome, manipulate the tally, and delete the tally, and compromise a vote in any number of ways. Okay, so going back, J. Alex Halderman, Russian hacking and U.S. elections. He was a professor, University of Michigan, computer science and engineering professor. He was able to hack voting machines repeatedly. He created attacks that can spread from machine to machine like a computer virus and silently change election outcomes. In every case, thank you for listening. If you want this information, I'd be glad to get it to you.
Thank you. Richard Stoffel.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Mayor DeVries and Assembly. And I want to also talk about the voting.
Richard, state your name for the record.
Richard Stoffel.
Okay, go ahead.
Voting, I wanted to talk about voting integrity also. And so you have a link in your file that we sent to you of a video. It's called the full video, Hacking America Computerized Voting Machines. And it's contained in your packet. You shouldn't have received this document. You have received this document in an email, which is sent to you, contains references to the second on where you can look into the video for the quotes. So you can see this stuff and verify it. So Hillary Clinton said, these are quotes are after the 2016 election. She said, you need to look at all these voting machines to make sure that they're not attacked. And also she said, there's too many of them and they're linked to the internet. And then Representative Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California, said, I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable. Representative Val Demings, from a Democrat from Florida, said, even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes. Representative Jennifer Waxton from the U.S. House and Democrat from Virginia says, in 2018, electronic voting machines in Georgia and Texas deleted votes for certain candidates or switched votes from one candidate to another. And then Ted Lieu, a Democrat from California, said these voting machines can be hacked quite easily. Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, said you could easily hack into them, these voting machines. And then Kamala Harris says there's a lot of states that are dealing with antiquated machines, which are vulnerable to being hacked. I actually held a demonstration for my colleagues here at the Capitol where we brought in folks who before our eyes hacked elections machines. We are vulnerable in terms of foreign interference in our elections. And then Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, and he said this on 7/20/19, our elections weren't secure last week, and they sure as heck aren't secure this week. And anybody who says otherwise is either selling you a voting machine or simply has a malicious intent towards our elections. So, theoretically, these people like the outcome of the election, except the one in 2016.
Thank you. Lloyd Thurman?
Before you start my timer, name's Lloyd Thurman. Just thank you for the Madam Mayor and also Assembly members. And I just wanted to comment on how great Ron Bernier's beard looks. Okay, Lloyd Thurman. I'm reading this by request here. There's absolutely nothing more important than our votes. Absolutely nothing. If we don't have that, we have nothing at all. So I'm excited about the fact that you're seriously looking at the fact of being able to do this and do away with these voting, because the corruption, you have to be blind, deaf, and dumb if you can't see the amount of corruption that has gone on in these elections that have gone on. And this is the reason why we're in the stinking mess we're in all across the country, because people have illegally got in by cheating. Anyhow, I'm going to read your borough codes here. 2535-012, counting ballots. Just wanted you to note how much control that you as the Assembly have put upon your clerk, probably more so than what is reasonable. And so some of that should be taken back over the decades instead of putting it totally upon one person. The ballots should be counted by the vote tabulation system selected by the clerk. That possibly needs to be removed. 25.35.30, ballot counting. The clerk shall designate the computers and use that are to be used in the counting of the ballots, and may negotiate and contract with the state or private computer services for the needed computer services. 25.35.40, ballot counting. No later than 1 week before the election, the vote tabulation system shall be tested in presence of and to the satisfaction of the review board. Upon completion of the testing, a security seal shall be placed upon the tabulation system for delivery to the precincts. That probably needs to be removed as well. 25.35.70, election certification. Voting tabulation systems. Upon closing the polls, election officials shall print results tapes, sign the tapes, and return the tapes and memory cards to the clerk, and set out the election that as set out in the election procedure. The results tapes serve as the precinct certificates of election. 25.3581 of the borough codes, counting early ballots. The early ballots shall be delivered to the review board assigned by the clerk for counting. The review board, shall print result tapes, sign the tapes, and return the tapes and memory cards to the clerk. Result tapes shall serve as the early voting precinct certificate of election. 25.20.60, election materials. The clerk may arrangements with the state for the use of voting machines and other equipment and supplies needed. Last one here, 2520.90, designation of hand count or computer count precincts. The clerk shall designate the precincts as hand count or computer count based on the equipment available. I just want to encourage you to go ahead and take the lead. I mean, it's exciting to think that we could finally take this thing back into the hands of the people, and we could verify the fact that the elections are accurate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. John Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Assembly members, and Borough Clerk. My name is John Miller. I have lived in the Valley since 1983, going on about 40 years now. This will be the third time that we've made this presentation first to the governor in March of 2019, and then to the lieutenant governor in June of 2019. Since then, much information and evidence of election manipulation has taken place. Our conclusion still the same, but only more urgent. The only way to assure a valid election is with paper ballots and hand counting election results. Election voting machines are susceptible to human error, malfunction, intentional sabotage, intentional manipulation of original code during testing or any time before the election. The evidence is presented in your packet. Viruses can be spread during testing with memory cards, USB, internet access, and can crash machines, erase computer setup files, and impact hardware. Virus instructions can run undetectable while all else is functioning normal, and the transfer of votes from one candidate to another, even while not running, as witnessed in the 2020 election. Viruses can run during election cycles only and disappear during testing, and any number of machines can be infected. Instructions and hacking tools can be found on the internet. Most machines can be hacked in 7 minutes. The resources to back these claims up are in your packets. With the huge amount of money, billions spent on campaigns, ads, brochures, signs, and travel, not to mention the millions of man-hours spent promoting candidates, plus the time and effort and resources just running an election, you would think that a greater amount of attention would be spent ensuring every aspect of these machines are flawless. Election integrity is the foundation of government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And on this, our constitutional democratic republic rests. Without true elections, the whole system of government is corrupt. Considering all the controversy, suspicion, mounting evidence of election fraud, we can simplify our elections, save time and save money, and restore the confidence in our election system. This should be the first priority of every elected official, election integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Brian Endo.
Thank you. My name is Brian Endo, your true conservative candidate for Matsu Borough Assembly District 1. I have over 20 years experience as an IT professional. I started as a programmer and later supervised IT personnel, managed IT projects, handled IT operations, and worked with IT security personnel. No person in business in their right mind would have one of these machines as their own. No one. Not all elections are stolen or manipulated. Some are not, but you won't know which ones are, and you won't know which ones are not. So I'll address the Borough Clerk's statement a little bit later, but before that, after I get some additional information, but before that, I want to ask you some questions or pose some questions to you that you really need to ask before you certify the election. So has the source code from Dominion or the vendor been verified to be malware free? Can you have someone from your IT team investigate it? And how will you certify the election if you don't know it hasn't been corrupted? In what country are the developers located who produce the code for these machines? China? Another country? Do you know? Will Dominion even tell you? Have you investigated the election management system, the main brain for this thing, or malware investigated its database for triggers that would change results? Watch Fraction Magic. It's in the Lieutenant Governor's presentation. It'll show you how that can be done, even in Alaska. Do the election officials have access to the election machine digital media, memory cards, etc., before the elections to verify that there's no malware on them? If so, have you verified it? Have you verified during the election time that these machines were actually not connected to the internet via any other device? Some have been found to do just that. Have you verified that there are no embedded chips in the machines that would allow communication to other devices in the room, allowing machines to get on the internet? I kind of doubt that any of these things have been verified. Have you looked thoroughly on the internet to verify the machines the borough uses cannot have the memory card or other components replaced without touching the locks or without affecting the locks on those machines? You'd be surprised what you can find on the internet. So in conclusion, paper ballots with a video recorded televised hand count is the only way to ensure election integrity. Provide a means to prevent recounts and avoid every question that I just posed to you. We can't rely on voting machines that have vulnerabilities preventing safe, secure, and fair elections. So take, for example, France. France counts ballots about a half a minute each. If we had a precinct with 1,000 ballots You can divide it up into 4 tables and count that thing way before midnight. It's altogether possible. And one fact you need to know before you certify the next election and use these machines is that these machines were created to steal elections. Thank you.
CJ?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Assembly, for allowing me to speak. My name is CJ Cohn, and I'm here also to discuss the voting machines and election transparency. And full disclosure, I have been an election official, including a chair recently, and I appreciate what the clerk has done and how she has things organized. But I would like to say that when you have mistrust, the one thing that you have to deal with is transparency. If you put transparency into things, you eliminate mistrust. And so some of the things that I would like to bring up is machines are normally more accurate when they are doing the counting than humans, but only when you verify them. And one of the things that we do as election officials is we verify the number of ballots to the number of voters, but not what's on the ballot. And so the verification is not as transparent as it could be. And without doing something like that, you're trusting that that machine is counting what's on that ballot correctly. And there's no verification of that. Even if there's a miscount or a recount, it's only the number of ballots per the number of votes. And a hand count is the only way that that can be validated and the transparency can be done. I would also like to recommend that there be more recruiting, and we've discussed this, to get more more people working on the elections so that you don't have a shortage. And if people knew that there was an opportunity to be able to come and serve and the recruiting could happen, it would help. Currently, Matsu Borough employees are working as election officials, and I believe that's a conflict of interest, and I think that should be reviewed, especially if there's bonds or if there's other things that are affecting the borough. Borough employees should not actually be the officials. And if there's not enough workers in the recruitment, calls could go out to previous election officials, which I believe is already happening, but also other community organizations, veteran organizations, churches, other organizations in the borough. Contact them and see if they'd be willing to give some volunteers. That's all that I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jackie?
Good evening. My name is Jackie Goforth. I am a writer, a researcher, and a retired government employee, and I want to talk to you about election integrity. On April 11th, 2000, 3 young Venezuelan engineers, Antonio Mudiga, Alfredo Jose Anzola, and Roger Pignati, founded the company Smartmatic in Delaware, United States. Due to their concern about the obsolescence of elections worldwide, the Venezuelan group dedicated themselves to the development of software. In the beginning of 2004, a Venezuelan government financing agency invested $200,000 in technology company owned by the same owners of Smartmatic. Smartmatic won 2 more contracts with the government of Hugo Chavez. Thanks to the income from those governments, they were able to buy an established electronic voting company, the Sequoia Voting Systems, for $16 million in 2005. Sequoia's machines were having trouble in Venezuela. Irregularities began to occur. And in 2007, the California Secretary of State voted after a review of the machines that they found significant security weaknesses in the entire Sequoia system. All the software that Sequoia was using was, in fact, from Smartmatic. Finally, pressure was applied to the owners of Sequoia in 2010. They had to sell the business, which was Smartmatic, also known as Sequoia, and they sold the company on June 4th, 2010, to some buyers out of Canada named Dominion. That day, the Canadian company not only bought Sequoia, they also acquired all the software and technological development that Smartmatic had patented. Let's skip a little bit here. The intellectual property of the voting systems for Sequoia, acquired by Dominion, remains the property of the company that's linked to the Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez. In 2019, Dominion attempted to get into Texas for the third time, and they were turned down again. They were dismissed after identifying multiple hardware and software problems that prevented the Texas Secretary of State's office from determining that the system satisfied the requirements set forth in the Texas Election Code. Now, let's go to the China connection. On October 8th, it was announced that it was found that Dominion Voted had been sold to Communist China for $400 million. That really didn't happen. 24% were sold to a USB securities company. The remaining 75% was sold to the Chinese government. And actually, if you look up the patent assignment search, you're going to find out that the security agreement between Dominion Voting Systems and HSBC Bank of Canada has been assigned. Then if you go find out HBC of the United Kingdom, HSBC Bank of the UK actually owns HSBC of Canada. And then if you look at that, you will find out that China owns HSBC UK. The Chinese Communist Party has control of the Dominion software. It's proven. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Father Hillman? Father?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Distinguished assembly members. I'm speaking for my church and myself. Unfortunately, I have nobody in District 1 in my congregation. Apologize, we'll work for that. Everybody in my congregation, I did a poll, and everybody in my congregation does not want a machine during voting process. Not Dominion, not any machine. Okay. Prior to Vietnam, I was a nuclear physicist student. We can do electron pulse and change anything. All of you guys here, as well as the people in the audience, have had their bank account compromised, their medical records compromised, all things. I was a government employee. I can tell you, my medical records was compromised. My everything, my pay was compromised. So when you think about the U.S. government having things safe, you know otherwise now, because I'm getting free LifeLock, and I've counted up. I probably get LifeLock for free for the rest of my life. Okay, now then, you also probably know your little cards that have chips on it. That can be modified, and if you've ever been in New York City, they highly recommend that you put your credit cards that has the chips in it in a little metal sleeve. That being said, have you seen any voting machine with a Faraday cage around it? What a Faraday cage is to make sure there's no electronic interference of that machine. Repeat, no electronic interference of that machine. Now you say, oh, these machines is publicly, as told by the Dominion people, own and sell these machines. They are not hooked up to the internet. Let's think about what that guy just said. It's a false statement. They have to be hooked up to the internet to communicate. When they do the tabulation, they communicate to the main server that does the tabulation and puts out the information. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Donna Koshi? Is that how you pronounce that?
Coker, maybe?
Coker?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Nothing like
My
it sounds.
apologies.
That's okay. So my name is Donna Kager. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Assembly, for allowing me to voice my opinion also on election integrity and voting machines. I didn't prepare a speech. I've listened to all these people, and I would like to empower you as the Assembly of the Matsu Valley to stand up for we the people who want to get rid of the voting machines and secure our election integrity. Thank you.
Okay, Karen Crandall? Karen? Yeah, I jumped. I'm sorry. I jumped people. But anyway, go ahead. Come on, Karen. Oops.
Well, thank you for allowing me to vote. I'm Karen Crandall, and I appreciate all of you being here and being able to have this meeting. So my concern is like what everyone else is voicing, that the Dominion machines were intentionally rigged. They were not accurate with correct results. There was international intervention, which we just heard about, which is illegal for other nations to be involved in our nation and Alaska votes and how they were tallied. Our Constitution is to be honored by our U.S. citizens with no tampering or interference of votes by other nations, as we learned, China, Venezuela, Europe, Canada. So all of that was done during the 2020 election process. And we just, from what I understand, we just recently obtained those Dominion machines. And so another point that I feel is really important is just watching the movie by Dinesh D'Souza called 2000 Mules. I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was documented and recorded that mail-in ballots were illegally taken to ballot boxes at all hours of the night and day. People that were both dead and alive were used and misrepresented with inaccurate tallying results. And a lot of those were taken from assisted living homes and nursing homes with witnesses giving really no accountability in the voting process. So I don't know if you saw that movie, but that really hit me hard, seeing how they're taking people that have very little cognitive ability to vote and just putting in their votes and rigging the voting process. So I believe that, like everyone else here, hand-counted votes need to be the course we should take in the state of Alaska in all of our voting precincts.
Thank you. Mike Alexander, and my apologies, Mike, I just jumped several people, but I know you forgive me, so. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for letting me talk here speaking. I want election integrity has drove me crazy the last year, but when you watch a Georgia State Senate hearing, there's a machine sitting out in the middle of the room, a Dominion machine. It's unplugged. And the guy's assistant takes a laptop and uses a smart thermometer on the wall or the thermostat. And he's changing votes right in front of him. The machine lights up and goes back. And as far as out teching you, these guys are pretty good at it. And that's what my whole point is. If you take away this machine, then you added a lot of integrity right there. And the other thing is, as far as the number of counting the votes, unfortunately, our borough elections don't exactly we don't get a landslide deal on this. I voted where we had 7% of us vote. Usually it's around 20, 24%. So, and I think you put out enough ads, they can count that. Someone told me lately that one of the counties in Ohio or somewhere counted 250,000 votes in about 3 hours. So I think we can do the hand counts. It adds a whole lot of integrity. That's the thing. There's no question about what you've really thought about. You've got some integrity. And unfortunately, if you lose, you can't even blame anything else. You'll just have to take your loss and take it home, but that's the thing I would like to see is do away with these machines, because there are just so many ways they can be got into. There can be algorithms, everything else. It's beyond me because it's tech. You've got me there, but they can do these machines up pretty quick. If we get rid of them, I think we can count. We put out the call for extra helpers, counting, because I know it's going to be a hard part on Lonnie and everybody else. But if we could do that, I think we'd have a whole lot better situation. We'd certainly have integrity back at our elections without a shadow of a doubt that we're at least doing one vote, one person. So thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Dixon.
This is you.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Dixon, and I'm speaking in regards to the Burma Road Tunnel. In July 1982, the Iditarod National Historic Trail Project Office, Bureau of Land Management, and the Alaska Department of Natural Resources published the Iditarod National Historic Trail Seward to Nome Volume 2. It states, and I quote, "The primary goal of the comprehensive plan is to promote the preservation, enjoyment, use, and appreciation of the historic route of the Iditarod Trail." End of quote. The DNR has had 30 years to assert the federal and state agreed upon INHT as located traveling from Knik to Fish Creek to Goose Creek, veering northwest above 7 Mile Lake and continuing westward, crossing above Anna Lake. The trail never crossed our property, which was taken for your tunnel. Of the 78 project maps used to identify the trail between Seward and Rainy Pass, only 3 maps, the Sleen 1910 and 2 others which showed the partial survey out of Knik, were used to locate the trail between Knik and Susitna. While closer to the 1912 trail, as shown on the Alaska Road Commission map, Mount McKinley District, 1951 to 1957, it is still too far south. The mushers like to claim Judge Easter's 2016 decision as their claim to our property. Judge Easter chose to ignore the fact that at least 2 DNR employees, which we were up against, were financially subsidized by the Iditarod Trail Committee. She seemed more concerned about a trip she had coming up with her daughter, which she shared with us as court. But the most telling event in the courtroom was when an Iditarod musher drew the route he remembered on a map of our area. He drew the trail correctly, north of our property, crossing at Anna Lake. That is the same trail location as shown on this INHT map. The state's attorney looked at the musher's map. Then we took a short break. After the break, the state's attorney asked if the musher could draw the trail again, and the judge let him. I'm sure you can guess that the second time he drew the trail, it was on our property. Judge Easter allowed what was obviously coach testimony. I knew there would be no justice for the trail or us at that moment. At another point in the lawsuit, the state was given a $10,000 fine for hiding evidence. Iditarod mushers also like to claim that the lawsuit went to the Supreme Court. That doesn't mean that they looked at any evidence. It just means that the clerical procedures were reviewed. The borough needs to be aware of the coordinated bullying of private property owners by Iditarod mushers and their financially subsidized DNR employees. This is not how our community should treat or allow its taxpayers to be treated. And the borough needs to conduct your own historical data review before any construction of RS 2477 routes is considered. We cannot depend on the state for unbiased or accurate historic trail locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Eastman.
Hello, my name is David Eastman. I currently represent the western rural Matsu north of Big Lake. I have a question to pose to you. My question is this. As members of the assembly, as the mayor, how do you assess the level of confidence in our elections in our community? And I would also like to speak particularly as an elected representative and suggest that you and I, as elected officials, are perhaps the least helpful people to be making those types of assessments on our own. And I'll tell you why. And that's because those you've heard testify here today on election integrity, those that, if you're like me, you spend a lot of your time with in your position as an elected official, are very active members of our political community. Probably a lot of them vote. How do you have contact with those who have so little confidence in the integrity of our elections that they either don't or stopped voting some time ago? Are you going to run into them on the street and strike up that conversation? Are they going to take the time to strike it up with you? Unlikely. They don't believe in the system enough to show up and testify like some of these folks here have done today. So by virtue of being elected officials, we're actually at a disadvantage to accurately assess what the level of confidence is if the people we're spending most of our time with are those who have the greatest amount of confidence in our system, in our elections, in the technology that's being used. So on behalf of those who didn't show up here today, whom I haven't talked with, whom I don't even know, and maybe you don't know either, who have stopped voting, I would ask you, how will you assess the confidence in our community? Like, one way you can assess it is you can look at voter turnout. You look at our last election, that's probably not a good number. Our unofficial results, of course, less than 8%. I'm sure that'll be added to down the road, but if that is the case, that's more than 82 out of 100 potential voters who chose not to participate. You can look at other elections, maybe the numbers are a little bit better, but can you point to an election in the last 10 years in the borough where you say the numbers are great, where you say the voter turnout was where it should be, it's met the goal, the target? Or do you say that there are some number, I don't know how many, some number of people who aren't voting, and some of those people aren't voting because they have a lack of confidence in our election system? Having talked to some of those people who have those concerns, who are still voting, I would ask that you look into it and that you find an answer to the question of how you will accurately measure the level of confidence that our community has in the current system. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Maxwell. Dave.
My name is Dave Maxwell. I am a whistleblower who was retaliated against by the state, and then I was fired for whistleblowing. At the beginning of the Dunleavy administration, just a second here, 50 or so Alaskans joined on a Skype call. I was one of them, to discuss and get informed on why we should not get the Dominion machines. Kevin Meyer was also on that call. He bought them anyway. In October of year 21, I began a petition to call for a forensic audit on the 2020 election. 282 signatures, with many expressing their doubts as to the outcome and demanding a forensic audit. You can see these at petitions.net. Headline, forensic audit. Kevin Meyer ignored it again. The Dunleavy administration had incompetently allowed Alaskan identities to be stolen not just once, but twice during elections in their term. Many Alaskans made phone calls to the governor and lieutenant governor, and their response was denial, dismissive, and disrespectful. This is solid evidence that the people's voice was in fact irrelevant. Alaska Supreme Court determines that no signatures will be required on mail-in ballots. Neither the legislative or the executive branch of what appears to be an incompetent or in the trench government stepped up to challenge the court's flawed ruling. This was an abrogation of responsibility to uphold the law. The legislative branch had the final say on this. Ranked choice voting was brought to us by questionable means and now has a predictable, destructive end in terms of the results we will get. It is also known to be so complicated that a forensic audit is impossible. Now Kevin Meyer has his excuse as to why he won't do a forensic audit. When I go and vote and am instructed to put my ballot in the machine, I ask, who made the machine? The response has been consistent, Dominion, but it's not connected to the internet. Well, were they? What's behind this seemingly guilty confession? The public needs to know what the insiders know. This last election in the Matsu saw less than 8% turnout. How much corruption, illegal actions, abrogated responsibilities, dismissal of the people's voice needs to happen to completely cause the people to say, to hell with it. We are close to a collapse, less than 8%. Get rid of the Dominion machines. Senator Shower bulldogged an effort to clean up election rolls to which this Dunleavy administration once again showed no effort or will to resolve this ongoing problem. Senator Shower even had to put effort toward changing verbiage in state statute from intend to shall in order to force Kevin Meyer to do his job and clean up the voter rolls. This Dunleavy administration has earned its do-nothing reputation. When you slap people, punch them, kick them in the private parts, you're going to hear about it. We have been, and that's why you're hearing about it. You have been told, fix it. Get rid of the Dominion machines. Thank you.
Doyle.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly. My name is Doyle Holmes, and I came to talk about the voting procedures here in the Matsu Borough. I served 11 years on the Matsu Borough Assembly, was deputy mayor for 3. I helped write about 75% of the laws that have to do with the voting procedures in the Matsu Borough. I would urge you, each of you, to take a look at the Borough Code and make sure that you understand it and you see any holes in it, try to get them fixed. With all of the concern nationwide about voting fraud, your job is to protect the vote of the people and make sure that the elections are treated fairly and honestly and there's no fraud involved. These machines can cause problems. And I believe that with all the people on the ballot this time, you're probably going to get a challenge. What could go wrong? Wow, let's see. I was running for office 5 times. I was elected 4 times. Only one of those elections survived without a challenge. I've spent over $10,000 and worked with the state and the borough to make sure that those laws were changed and were honest. What could go wrong? The first time I ran for office, well, nothing could go wrong. Back in those days, all you had to do to get a absentee ballot was call in the borough or write a letter. You got a ballot. No envelopes, no signatures were required. You just sent it back and it was counted. However, I found out that in that first election, which I did eventually win, that some groups that were opposed to me went down the highway, took the ballots out of the mailboxes, voted them, and sent them in. So all of a sudden, when I got elected, we tried to take care of that with signatures and envelopes over the years. When we got the first voting machines in Talkeetna, it broke. There was no protection at that time about the ballots, so we wrote into the code that the voting officials had to stay there, the troopers had to be called, and they would escort those ballots down here to the borough headquarters. Well, the next election, the machine broke again. And this time, nothing could go wrong. The people in Talkeetna left the poll unattended, left the ballots in the possession of a little gal about 20 years old. She was sitting in the dark with those ballots, waiting on someone to come pick it up. The clerk, in all honesty, wanted to make sure that those ballots were protected. The troopers weren't called. The clerk ask the Houston clerk, run up to Talkeetna, get those ballots and bring them back, and I'll meet you in Houston, and we'll use the Houston machine to count the ballots. They were not counted until they arrived here at the headquarters. So the machines can go bad. I'm running for office again this year, and I'm going to make sure that there's some poll washers up in Talkeetna, but I'm predicting already that that machine's probably going to break again. Okay. So again, your job is to make sure that it's honest, and I would urge you, I'm going to read those procedures and make sure that I'm familiar with them, and I urge you to make sure that you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Carl and Karen Spills, is that, no?
I didn't prepare anything, so it's going to be a little different.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm Carl Spates. Basically, I have 38 years experience as a senior officer and a senior civilian working for the government national security strategy. It's not who votes, but who counts the votes that are the issues. I went into Yugoslavia when Tito took over as a general. He counted the votes, and he became the ruler. I was in the Philippines when Marcos counted the votes as a general, and he became the ruler. So, and there's multiple in Central America, and Idi Amin down in Africa counted the votes as a general, and he became the ruler of that nation. So we live in a free America, this free country. The people must trust our most sacred right, and that's to vote in our elected officials. The votes have to be secure, and the votes should be tabulated at the lowest level, hand counted if possible. And that's going to turn me to the last thing. Okay, we did all kinds of IT equipment in the government. The last one we did was RFID when we went into Bosnia Herzegovina, and on the trains we put up an RFID tag. We had 8-year-old Arab kids that were hacking our systems with a laptop computer. So trust me, this can be hacked. Anything can be hacked. Last, I went to Ohio to watch them do a 250,000 count. They said there were 50 counties in the state of Ohio, and they knew every district in each county, and there was an average of about 12. I sat with one of the individuals that was the captain. His name was Tom Howard from Springfield, Ohio. They sat down, they did a run of 250,000 counts, and they did it based on the rolls. They were able to check the roll, check the signature, check the vote. At the lowest level, they tabulated it. They passed it from the district level, which was the lowest level, up to the county level. The 50 counties tabulated these, counted them again, and then separated and provided them to the Secretary of State, all in 7 hours, 250,000 votes. And they did it without machines. So I know it works. This is a free country, and we have to do what's right, because if people don't respect or see their vote is counted, then they're going to not believe any elected official that's sitting up there trying to represent them. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Karen? Carl, is Karen here? Okay, all right, okay. Okay. Wade Long? Mhm.
It's an honor to speak in front of the borough. I appreciate everybody's attention. Unfortunately, I'm here to complain about something. Unfortunately, it's my first visit here, but the Matsu Borough gifted the Meadow Lakes Community Council a 40-acre parcel below market value for its use. That property is right next to the Wilderness Estates Trailer Park where I live, and my home, it borders this property. They're planning to install trails there that include an ATV trail that's just feet from our home. So why am I here? Well, as a father and husband in charge of my family's peace, I am speaking in opposition of this planned ATV trail. It's not neighborly or ethical. I spoke out against it at the Meadow Lakes Community Council meeting in June, and the president of the Meadow Lakes Community Council discounted my complaint and emailed you guys a statement on their letterhead with an embellishment. So I need to clarify that. But I did want to let you guys know what I told them at the Meadow Lakes Community Council meeting. I said, the proximity to our homes is disrespectful. Did we even matter when they surveyed this? And I noticed that this awesome idea wasn't anywhere near their homes. What if strangers are tearing up and down your street on ATV next to your home every day and night? I bet you'd call the cops. What if a neighbor installed something like a gun range and opened it free to the public? I bet you'd be disgruntled. And I wondered if noise abatement was even considered. Borough Chapter 8.52 maximum permissible sound limits are 60 decibels during the day and 50 decibels during the night, but ATV sounds is 85 to 100 decibels. And calling the police will be my responsibility. And I emailed all of you, including my representative, Assemblymember Bernier. I just learned how to pronounce your name. I was going to say Bernier. I didn't know. I'm sorry. But the Honorable Mayor DeVries replied, as a very classy person for sure, as always has been, and said I could come speak. Well, I did go to the Meadow Lakes Community Council meeting, and the Happy Trails company owner was there. And he actually said that it's actually very unnatural for an ATV trail to be planned next to a residence like this. And that's when but he said it's okay because the president of the Meadow Lakes Community Council surveyed about 10 people when she was handing out these flyers describing this thing and said that there was overwhelming support for it. But that's not true. There is overwhelming support for the trails that they plan to install there, which are nature trails or equestrian trails. But there's literally only like 2 people, a husband and wife, that like the ATV trail. And I know this is an embellishment because the property manager of Wilderness Estates did a legit petition and 30 people signed against it. That's 70 to 75% of the community members there. So what I want is for you guys to use your sphere of influence, ask them to move it to the other side. I just want to move it. Here's my home. There's a trail they want to put in for no good reason. Just move it over to the other side. Plenty of room. They said there's a 100-foot buffer here between the soccer field and the thing. And I also want Happy Trails to not do this trail. And also, mostly, I want the Meadow Lakes Community Council to do the right thing and not install it right next to our homes. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Finn Ray?
Madam Mayor, Assembly, thank you. My name is Finn Rye. I've been a resident of Palmer for 35 years. I've been a voter and a homeowner in the Valley for approximately 20 of those years. I'm a cybersecurity engineer with 20 years of experience, and I've taught 40 semesters of technology courses as an adjunct at the University of Alaska. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity and information assurance. As you know, the integrity of our voting systems and processes in America are foundational to our continued democracy. Electronic voting has many potential benefits, but if not handled correctly, electronic voting can expose our election to mistakes and fraud. A May 2022 Associated Press article titled, quote, "Voting Software Vulnerable in Some States," end quote, reported that while the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, found no evidence of Dominion voting systems having been compromised in 2020, CISA did release an advisory warning the states that they are not doing enough to reduce the risk of exploitation of these voting systems. The 25,000-word report contained enough evidence of exploitable vulnerabilities that the court systems ordered the report to be filed under seal to avoid public disclosure to prevent compromise of these voting systems while the manufacturer attempted to address them. Now, you might think that it's preposterous to be concerned about integrity of these voting machines because they are not connected to the internet, but consider this. In 2012, a hardened Iranian nuclear enrichment facility that was completely disconnected from the internet had all of its centrifuges and 200,000 computer systems destroyed by using a single USB drive. Ask yourself, is it possible that a determined skilled attacker or a nation-state-backed cyber army could manipulate our election data? One of the most serious vulnerabilities could allow malicious code to be spread from election management systems to machines throughout the district. The vulnerability could be exploited by somebody with unknown network access or physical access to a machine. If an election worker used a USB stick to transfer data that could unknowingly infect election management systems, this could be difficult to detect, prevent, or even audit after the fact. The University of Michigan's computer scientist, Alex Halderman, he wrote the report on which the CISA advisory was based, and he has long argued that using digital technology to record votes is dangerous because computers are inherently vulnerable to hacking, and thus they require multiple safeguards that are not being uniformly followed. He and many other election security experts have insisted that using hand-marked paper ballots is the most secure method of voting and is the only option for meaningful post-election audits. Attackers could forge memory cards using machines, and another major concern is the supply chain problems because electronic components of voting machines are sourced from foreign countries and introduces the potential for backdoors during assembly. If you recall, the borough itself was a victim of a cyber attack that significantly disrupted government operations and cost taxpayers millions of dollars just a few years ago. So I ask you, if you're going to use electronic voting machines, what steps are you taking to ensure that these real concerns from the U.S. government and cybersecurity officials and experts are being followed?
Thank you. Steve Renner? Steve?
Okay, my name is Steve Renner, and I want to thank you all for being open-minded enough to address this issue. And I want to thank those of you that came tonight to join in this. Now, me personally, I'm going to go for a moral appeal here. This is what we're dealing with right now has the potential to be called tyranny. When I was driving here tonight, I stopped by to see a good friend of mine on the way. He told me a story about his father. His father was 19 years old, was a navigator in B-24s, flying out of North Africa, bombing the Romanian oil fields, the lifeline of Hitler's oil supply. The pilot in the plane that he was in was 21 years old. Okay, he got shot down, his father. He spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. He was fortunate because they were losing 33 out of 100 of these planes on every mission. Now, you know what? They fought a battle and they won. Now it's our duty today to continue the battle for the Republic, because what we stand to lose by jeopardizing the integrity of this vote is the very constitutional republic that guarantees us all the freedoms that we share tonight, as well as the freedoms of our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. It is our turn to do the right thing. John Adams said, due to his wife Abigail, that our republic will survive as long as we are moral people and we are subject to a higher being. It is our turn tonight to begin to restore integrity into a process that we cannot afford to lose. Thank you.
Okay. Righty, now I will open it up to those that are here that would like to address the assembly on any issue but didn't sign up. Hi.
That would be me.
All right, good.
So I came straight from work back home and then to here, and I didn't
State
prepare
your name,
anything. My
please.
name is Bev Stalker, and I live in the Butte, and thank you very much. And I just wanted to come up and talk with you guys for just a little bit and just say, you know, I can give a character reference to both Brian Endel and Finn Rye. I worked with those two individuals for, gosh, something like 15 years in a previous employer that we all worked together in. Both of those individuals have outstanding character. Both of them are excellent analysts, and both of them I trust. So I would ask that all of you take a look at this, because you do have a problem in this valley. We do. There is an attitude of non-trust in our votes. I hear it. And if you guys are honest and you talk to a lot of people, you've probably heard it yourself. We need to do something. And I have to say, I personally do agree that if you have paper ballots and you do same-day count, I don't care which side you're on, it's going to increase your transparency, and it's also going to increase the validity and decrease ability for fraud. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Sally Pollen, and I appreciate you all. I'm not going to beat you up, especially over this issue, because I believe you're probably tired of the Dominion machines yourself. But I've been in the Valley for about 40 years, born and raised here in Alaska. And I remember at the train depot years ago, counting paper ballots with Betty Moffat. Okay, it was easy to do. There were 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. It was very carefully done. And I'm here to support paper ballots. And one thing I was curious about, I sat down out here, and not one person came up in favor of Dominion machines. And I was curious about that. Usually with a public testimony like this, you'll find somebody that's in favor, many people in favor, many people against an issue. I didn't hear anybody in favor of the Dominion machines. And I really appreciate all the testimony, and I learned a lot about the Dominion machines. And another curious question I had was, how much would the borough save by going to paper ballots, by not using the Dominion machines? I just recently worked the special election, and it went flawlessly. There was 130 people who voted, 130 people. And I have no idea how much the special election cost, but I imagine it was pretty great. And so I'm just going to echo what everybody else has said, and ask you guys to look at this matter seriously, as you're probably already doing. And I'd be so proud to be part of the Matsu Borough, and the first place in the state that dumped the Dominion machines.
My name is Tim Allen, A-L-L-E-N. My wife, Rachel Allen, is running for House Seat 28. I'm not going to speak one way or the other on the machines. I came here tonight just to give you our personal testimony about the recent voting that we did. My wife and my ballots, both of them, it took 4 tries to get it in the machine. And when it did go in, finally, it was upside down and backwards. So did our vote count once? Or did between the two of us, did it count 8 times? Matter of fact, when I put mine in the first time, the election officials there said, "Oh, it's going to work." It counted about 7 seconds. And I stepped away from the machine and kicked it out. And there was an error. So I turned it over upside down, stuck it in. It kicked it back out. Turned it right side up, but backwards. Put it in. It kicked it back out. Finally, it was upside down and backwards, and it took it. So, and this was at the North Fork building there on Bogart Road. And the people working there said, we've been having that all day long. It's been taking 3 or 4 times to get it in the machine. Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon? Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Kathy Harris. I'm a resident here in the Matsu Borough. And I'm here regarding the voting machines and the integrity of our vote. I want to thank you, Mayor, Manager, and Assembly members for listening to the citizens. First of all, I'd like to say that for the election of on the passing of Don Young, when we had the mail-in ballots, my daughter and I live in the same house, both of voting age. She received her mail-in ballot, and I did not. So I called the elections office, and I told them, I did not receive my ballot. And so they looked something up on the computer, I'm guessing, and said, well, it's confirmed that your ballot was delivered. And I said, well, I have a locking mailbox. So what happened to my ballot? And the only answer I got was that my ballot had been delivered and that my only option was to vote in person. I just wanted to pass that along. So I went to vote in person, and I walked in, and in the very front where I walked in was a voting machine, and on the very front it said Dominion voting machine. So there was a nice older lady sitting on the other side of the voting machine, and so I asked her, I said, can you tell me what kind of voting machine this is? Is this a Dominion voting machine? And she said, ma'am, I'm sorry, that's not in my training. I don't know. So that's pretty sad. It's not the older lady's fault, but it's pretty apparent that there's a problem. Moving on, I work in healthcare, obviously. I worked hospice, ER, hospital floors, clinics. I'm very passionate, invested, and integrity is important to me. Patients are important to me. As Assembly members here, I believe that the citizens here are important to you, that Alaska is important to you, and I really appreciate that. 7 to 9% of the last vote is a problem. In healthcare, if a person's heart is operating at 25%, their viability is maybe 6 to 12 months, along with any other organ that you'd like to throw in there. Just picture a patient trying to operate at 7 to 9%. This is the reality of the picture of the Matsu rural voting population. It's code blue, and it's a problem. People are more important than machines. Their vote is more important than machines. And the machines, as you've heard tonight, are problematic. Governor Dunleavy had a historic opportunity from the onset of COVID. He had the opportunity to be a hero for Alaskans by keeping businesses running and open. But he opted to serve the government machine over the integral freedom of the people. The Matsu Borough was historic by keeping schools open and businesses open. People came and they were shopping here. Now, if you guys took, and we all took, and we linked arms, and we took these voting machines out, we would be iconic in Alaska. We would have the historic opportunity. Imagine if we had 50% of the vote. And I just want to finish with this. Well, two things. One is I stopped at Little Miller's and got a coffee. And I asked the gal there, I said, hey, did you vote? And she said, I didn't see the voting signs until the day of, and it was too late. And I said, well, did you look someplace else for the information? And she said, no, not really. And I said, why? And what is she, 20, 18 years old? And she said, I don't trust it. And I said, what would make you trust it? And she said, I won't do the voting machines. And that's, a Little Miller's coffee gal. And the other thing I want to just close with too is we use a lot of equipment to save lives. I've been privileged to help save lives. Would you want a Dominion voting machine to save your life? Because if you don't want it to save your life, you don't want it to have your vote. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to address the assembly? Caleb, do we have, oh. No, I'm sorry. We do not have anybody online, Caleb? We do? No. Yeah. I asked a question with a double negative in. I don't know what I expect you to, I expect you to answer that, or for me to interpret the answer, I guess. One more time. Anyone else that would like to testify on any subject? That's what audience participation is, for any subjects you want to address to the assembly. Okay, seeing no one, then I will close audience participation. The next item on the agenda is at the consent agenda. Does the assembly have anything to pull? Okay, seeing and that's all right. Seeing and hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you read the consent agenda into the record?
I will. Resolution 22067, a resolution amending the scope of work and the title of the roof replacement Brett Memorial and Wasilla Pool project to include the Willow and Talkeetna ice rink repairs and improvements. AM 22094, vacate the 50-foot wide public use easement recorded at 2004 02-1138-0 on the southern border of tax parcel A11 located in Section 4, Township 17 North, Range 3 West, Seward Meridian for the Beaver Flats Master Plan. AM 22095, vacate the 50-foot wide right-of-way to include the temporary turnaround shown as South Derby Drive recorded on Meadowland Park Estates Plat 8388 located in Section 34, Township 17 North, Range 2 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, Assembly District 1. And AM 22096 awarded bid number 22161B to OT Enterprises LLC in the contract amount of $167,315 for Sunset Drive improvements.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Is there any objections to the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first item of unfinished business into the record?
Ordinance 22015, an ordinance amending MSB 4.46, Historical Preservation Commission.
Okay, the main motion is on the floor. Is there any object or discussion? Is there any objection? Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I'm not sure whether where I'm supposed to be addressing this, perhaps it is now. This is the one to which
Deputy
Mr.
Mayor
Sumner
asked, yes.
made some amendments.
Yeah, and we postponed it until tonight.
After having read this whole thing, does this language prevent this commission from holding up a project? Because a person that I know came and told me about a project that basically you couldn't dig a foxhole if you didn't get these folks' permission. I just want to know if in the opinion perhaps of Mr. Sumner, that concern is taken care of.
Yes, Deputy Mayor?
I do think that it could if, so the borough does something called no engineer left behind, where they basically, any decisional process, they shop it around to every single department head, people, and they all provide input. And so if somebody says, and we have a historic preservation plan adopted by the Historic Preservation Commission, says that it does not meet up with the whatever's set out inside that plan, then they may reject that, whatever project it is or whatnot. I mean, you see it all the time. So somebody will say something doesn't meet the official streets and highways plan, or it doesn't meet this or that, the borough comprehensive plan, and it can be used as a basis for decisions. So, I mean, I would recommend that if we are to pass this, we'd make it so that it cannot be a basis for decisions on projects, that it would be advisory only.
Advisory, yeah. I read another thing too, and it was using the word coordinate. What does coordinate mean? I know what coordinate means to me. It means kind of like running the show. I mean, I don't want this commission to be able to do that. So if that word stays in there, I can find out what page it was on. 4.46.010, and that wasn't addressed in your amendment. So I thought perhaps if you looked at that and saw that as a problem like I do, who Who does the coordinating? What does that actually mean?
Deputy Mayor, or do we have someone from staff or manager?
Hello, this is Adam Bradway, planner with the Matsu Borough again. So I'm staff to the Borough's Historic Preservation Commission. And so I think the main point is that this is an advisory board. And so ultimately the Assembly has the final say on anything related to historic preservation. So this board has no authority on their own other than to recommend actions to the Borough Assembly.
So recommend being the keyword and advisory being the other keyword. Okay. I also was kind of curious about the word cultural. Is that multicultural? Is it because we have our 1935 folks coming here and settling the valley? That's kind of cultural. That's historic. Is that included in this, or are we talking primarily or perhaps only about some sort of an Alaskan Native Indigenous folks culture?
No, culture and cultural resources are the current terminology for historic preservation. Essentially, culture is an all-encompassing word because our history and our history is a part of our culture, where culture is the bigger term. So culture includes history, Native culture, all the histories. So.
Okay, and then I'll stop. But bottom line is that this is merely advisory.
It's an advisory commission, yes.
All right. Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor?
So if I might clarify, it's the plan that is updated by this body that would be referenced in project decisions, not the body itself. So, I mean, this is just to update the code for the Historic Preservation Commission, not the actual plan. So
Further, yeah, I don't know, we're gonna have to rearrange this up here, right? Or I need to have better peripheral vision, one or the other here. Anyone else from the Assembly have discussion? Is there any objection to, oh, I'm sorry, Assembly Person, you want, go ahead.
Is there an amendment coming forward? Is there possible? Okay, I just wanted to confirm.
Is there, hearing no amendment, I guess there isn't. Is there any objection to passing the legislation? Okay, the legislation then has been passed. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22068, an ordinance approving the sale of borough-owned land identified as Lot 4 and Lot 5, Block 4, Matanuska Town Site, U.S. Survey 1169, to the adjacent property owner Kenneth and Myra Olson, and repealing the public purpose dedication placed on the borough lot.
Okay, there's a main motion on the floor. Further discussion? Yes, go ahead, sir.
What was this property? Or what was the dedication?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Matanuska Township.
Tim, you need your mic.
Sorry, I believe it was Matanuska Township across the highway from like the Kepler Lake system. Down in the hole across the train tracks there.
Okay. Assemblyperson McKee.
Last time we spoke about this, we set it off until tonight. What has changed since then? I went out and visited the place, and the Mr. Metters, I believe it is, had written a letter saying that he had spent a lot of time and money cleaning up that area, and that there were wood chips on the right of way and that sort of thing. And indeed, there's a big stack of wood chips. Can we, as a body, influence that in any way and say, yeah, you can have it, but you can't mess it up, kind of thing?
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I would like land management to give an update. So since the last meeting, we published our findings. Code compliance did a site visit, as did land management. That was published in last week's weekly post. So why don't we just recap from land management perspective and a planning department or code compliance perspective findings, and then we'll see if there are questions from there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Assembly. My name is Lisa Gray, and I'm the land management agent in land management. So to give you an update, some of the concerns or questions that came up at the last meeting had to do with the wetlands and the high water table. So we walked these properties. There are dry areas on the property, and there are some lower areas that are wet. A rough estimate of the dry area across the 3 parcels, the ones that Olson's own and the 2 parcels the borough owns, would be about 10,000 square feet of usable dry area. If the wetlands are going to be dredged or filled, it would have to go through the Corps of Engineers, and the first thing they would do is a jurisdictional wetland determination. So then if they determined it was wetlands of the US, a permit would be required to fill or dredge those. So I asked the Olsons if they had plans to dredge or fill those wetlands, and they said no, they do not. They said that their plans were to use it in a more of an agricultural way, and that they were going to use trees to plant there. And they also provided comments, I think that you have, and they wrote or explained what those, what the agricultural purpose was for and planting those trees. And then code compliance, Alex Strong addressed the code compliance issues in a memo, and none of these properties had any borough violations. At the wood chips, I think Alex also addressed that. There were no wood chips on these 3 lots. There are wood chips in the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Have any questions?
Has anybody heard from Mr. Metters since this investigation kind of thing?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions, discussion by the Assembly? Okay. Is there any objection to passing the legislation? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then the legislation passes. There are no vetoes. Madam Clerk, we're ready when you are for the introductions.
Introduction for public hearing on August 2nd is ordinance 22082, ordinance 22084 with accompanying resolution 22064, ordinance 22085, ordinance 22086 with accompanying resolution 22065, ordinance 22087 with accompanying resolution 22066.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearings for August 2nd, 2022.
Discussion by the Assembly? Hearing none, the legislation is introduced. The next item is the vacancy report. Deputy Mayor?
I move to confirm the appointments and resignations requested by the mayor as follows. Enhanced 911 Advisory resignation of Rebecca Turney, Road Service Area Task Force 2022, resignation of Stephen Edwards, Jill Parson, Westlake's FSA number 136, removal of Steve Simpson, Talkeetna Sewer and Water Service Area number 36, resignation of Jennifer Crosby.
Any discussion on the agency vacancy report? Is there any objection? Hearing none, the vacancy report is approved. There is no other new business. There are no referrals. There are no other reconsiderations. So we're ready for Mayor, Assembly, and staff comments. Mr. Attorney, since this will be your last one for a while, you want to start with comments?
Nope.
Okay. Assemblyperson McKee, comments? No. Assemblyperson 2, no. Assemblyperson Hale, no. Assemblyperson, no. Borough Manager?
Just quickly, so during the meeting, a flood warning was issued for the Willow Creek area at the Parks Highway until 9 p.m. tomorrow night. We expect we may see more of these types of things over the coming hours and days. So just for your information, we'll continue to monitor and provide updates as it's appropriate.
Okay. Madam Clerk, comments?
I'm just going to cover some of the basic stuff that I can't say everything that or answer everything that was said tonight because there was a lot. The Matsu Borough only uses paper ballots. We do not use electronic ballots. The Matsu Borough does not transmit our election results via modem that are in the machines. They are never connected to the internet. They are stored on a memory card with locks in it. We double check those locks as they're going out. We double check those locks are the same number as they're coming in. And the last lady that spoke, and I couldn't catch if she was talking about a borough election or state election. We only send out ballots to people who request them. We just didn't send out ballots. And we would not be able to tell if she received her ballot or not. So I'm not sure. It must have been a state election. And just, I did discuss Dominion voting with during every single election training. And I always advise election officials to have people call us, which they did. They're there to help people vote that day. They're not there to answer those questions. But those are just some of the things that I wrote down. But if any of the assembly members have any other questions, please feel free to call me. I've talked to, I think, almost everybody that's called the office except one gentleman who didn't leave his number.
Comments, Assemblyperson Yon?
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to send my condolences to the family of Andy Anderson out of the Palmer and Sutton area. He's been pretty active in here. He spoke on a few different occasions, and in my time here in the Valley, there's very few people that I can say has given as much time to youth as Andy has, traveling around the country, helping them out. And he went down in his airplane last week, and my heart breaks for his family. So I wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Assemblyperson Nowers? Okay. Deputy Mayor, comment?
No comment.
Okay. And I have no comments either. Thank you, everyone. Meeting's adjourned at 9:27?
9:29.
9:29. Okay.